Hello, 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 hello. All right, I'm going to count to 10 and please tell me if you can hear me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so I guess I have to get started. So let me close this and yeah, we get started with a live stream. Okay, hi guys, I hope you are all doing fine. Today we're going to be live streaming. I tried live streaming on Monday, but I just failed because the internet kind of acted up and I even got interrupted. But I hope today's live stream goes well. In fact, let me pop out the chat. You please kindly tell me if you can hear me, if you can please give me some feedback on the audio, on the video, and all that stuff. I will highly appreciate. Let me pop out the chats. I'm not so used to this live streaming thing. In fact, I'm doing it for this for like this. I want to get so consistent. Some feedback on the audio, on the video, and all that stuff. I will highly appreciate. Okay, let me pop out that. All right, so here's the chat. And okay, so I hope you're doing fine. So today we're going to try to build something with Reflex, something that's both front end and back end. The other time we built a simple kind of to-do list-ish app, but let's try to build something with some extra features, but with Reflex. So I'm going to try to at least be a little bit scripted in this video. I don't want to be like how I was yesterday. So what I'm going to do is to pull up the Reflex documentation, as it may sort of guide me on what some stuff that I may be necessary if you're using the front-end framework or the back-end. So let's get started. If you haven't checked out Reflex, it's a web application framework that helps you build full-stack web applications with Python. And the way it achieves that is to use existing Python technologies on the back end and also use JavaScript technologies on the front end. So we're going to look at all that in this video. So to begin, I'm going to begin by first of all creating a folder. This is a new installation of Ubuntu, and I kind of hate when I have to reinstall everything. It kind of makes the things not work as they should. So we're just going to create a simple, let's just create a simple blogging application. And I'll just seed into the application. Let me just make this a little bit bigger so that you guys can see. So this is going to be our Reflex blog. So right in here, I'm going to open up my code. And yeah, we shall be coding from inside there. So I'll be going back and forth with the chat and the whole thing, or I may even place this side and place the VS Code now that I have a larger screen. Yeah, so I trust the authors. So to begin, we're going to first of all set this folder up. We're going to create a virtual environment and install our project dependencies. Now, depending on which operating system you are always going to have the Venv. You're going to always have the Venv package or module installed within your Python system. However, for Ubuntu, you may find yourself having to reinstall it with something like sudo apt. I think this is a bad idea. I guess I'll have to make it big. So you may do something like sudo apt install and then python 3-venv. So that will go ahead and install a virtual env for Python 3 on your system. So I'm currently on this Python, which is Python 3.10.12, but you can feel free to use something like Python 3.11 or Python 3.12. So I'm going to go ahead and create a virtual environment with Python 3-m-venv and then env. And right after creating that virtual environment, I'm going to go ahead and activate it. Then we install Reflex. Can you guys see the letters? Are they big or are they small? Should I increase the text? So I struggle with JavaScript in Django. Can you tell me how to go about it? Should I use React and DRF? So this is the first question I've got by Siesto. So Siesto, the way to get good at anything is by doing. So I would highly recommend you do your React. Try to practice a framework like React or Vue.js, and yeah, you get building your front end with React and your back end with, let's say, Django REST framework or Django Ninja. So let's go ahead. So what I'll do is to activate this with source env bin and activate. Once it's activated, I'm on bash with this thing called my bash. Therefore, it will display the virtual environment with the version number right here. So once that's installed, once that is created, the virtual environment, and then activated, the next thing is going to be for me to go ahead and install Reflex. So that will be achieved with a simple pip install Reflex. Now while that is being installed, let me check in the chat. So Siesto, the way you're going to learn JavaScript is to build with JavaScript. I'm not that much of an expert in JavaScript, but I learned React, but it was mostly to fit in with the front-end developers because I couldn't do front-end. But you can't, of course, learn React without having a good understanding of the fundamentals of JavaScript. And much of React really depends on the knowledge that you've built up. So I would recommend that you learn JavaScript, the language, and then after learning the language, you learn concepts like DOM manipulation. And right after you've built some projects, got some skills in those, then I think it would be a good time to check out the React or the Vue.js kind of libraries or frameworks. So I want to use Vanilla.js in Django. Well, using Vanilla.js in Django is not that hard. In fact, you can build your templates and then add the JavaScript inside those templates to run. The beauty is that you are rendering these templates from your server side, so you can link the JavaScript you want to run on those specific templates to those specific templates inside your Jinja or inside your templating engine. So it's something that's achievable. There are also alternatives such as HTMX. Haven't used it that much, but they say it really does the job. It helps you manipulate your DOM elements without having to do any JavaScript or without having to write so much JavaScript. Okay, so our Reflex is installing. It has quite a lot of things it depends on, and that's why it takes quite a lot of time to install. Have I answered your question, Siesto? Kindly leave an answer. I would like to know. Siesto, is Siesto from Kenya? Yeah, I think you attended the last live stream. Hi, Michael Joyner. I hope you're doing well. Hi, Arjun Krishna. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for joining my live stream, and I hope you learned something from this video. So let me go to the Reflex documentation, and then we kind of see what to do. So this is running Google Chrome in the background. I don't know why Linux desktop environments seem like tricky to use, but they're sometimes good. Let me try to at least use Firefox and keep the chat in. Oh yeah, Siesta is from India, and I had forgotten there's some other person who joined last week's live stream. So let me try to close this and just open up the Reflex documentation so that we can jot down some of the things that we're going to look at in this video. So do you like batteries included frameworks like Django, or something from ground up like Flask and FastAPI? So this question is a really good question, and basing on my own opinion, I think batteries included frameworks are really good, most especially for times where you want to ship so fast, where you want to implement features so fast and then be able to ship your product really fast. In scenarios where you have freedom, where you want to experiment and build everything from scratch, then you may choose frameworks like Django or FastAPI. Another instance in which you may need Flask or FastAPI is when you're dealing with microservices. I think that's where these micro frameworks shine. But I don't think of FastAPI as, I don't think FastAPI is that much of a micro framework, but it is sort of like a micro framework. But I think in scenarios where you need to build microservices, tools like FastAPI allow you to build your service with all the logic that you want for that specific service, and you write all the code for that specific service. In fact, when I worked at a startup where I was, they weren't using Django for the microservice that I was building. It was using Flask. And yeah, the microservice was running well. It was performing whatever it had to perform. So yeah, my Reflex is still installing. That's how crazy it is. And even the internet speed is reducing. Hope you guys can at least hear me and see me. So the choice of framework really depends on what you want to do. So whenever you want to build a big project that needs you to ship very fast, then you need to go ahead and choose like Django or whatever other big framework you know out there. In fact, there is also a model view controller framework for Python. It's called Masonite. Yeah. So I'm going to jot down some of the things that I want to talk about in this live stream. So I'm going to get my text editor right here. So we're going to basically start by looking at the components, so the concept of components, and we shall look at so basically here we have components, we have pages. Let me just write this down here, and then I kind of make the video following this specific order. So you have the concept of pages, we have styling, how do we add styles to our components. Then we also have assets. So assets are those things that you may want to expose to the public, things like images, JavaScript, and other things. So we're going to look at how we also add them. Another thing we're going to be looking at is, for now we shall not look at wrapping React components, and I'll explain why, because the kind of application that we're going to build is something that will not require us to do that. Wrapping React components is mostly done when you want to get some third-party JavaScript package and install it within a Reflex app. So in scenarios like that, that's where you may want to wrap a React component. So there are also things on the back end, but before we go there, let's talk about the state. The concept of state is very important, as you may need to keep data within the app consistent, and whenever you update this data or change this data, those changes should modify the entire application. They should change the entire application. So state is also something important that we shall talk about. Now we shall also talk about events. So events are very important in any sort of like web application, because basing on these events, then you go ahead and perform actions. We shall look at how to handle normal events, for example, clicking of buttons, submitting of forms, and stuff like that. Then we're also going to be looking at, so I'm just getting all the topics I'm going to be talking about from here. So there is events, there is route, substates, but we shall basically now talk about the backend. And on the backend, we shall talk about API routes. So we want to build something full stack, and therefore we should build routes to that. So we're going to have to look at the concept of API routes. Then we shall look at, so client storage is something that can come when you're using things like, let's say, local storage or cookies. But for the sake of this video, I don't think we shall need that. Maybe I'll try to create another video where we shall be talking about things like authentication, where you may need to keep HTTP only cookies for the front end. But I don't think that's something that we're going to look at in this video. So for now, we're going to look at API routes and then connecting to our database. So I'll just add it right here. I'll just say databases, and then authentication, blah blah blah. The rest are outside the scope of this video. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and I think I'll save it as topics, hoping that by this time Reflex has installed. Yeah, it's still installing. This is weird. You know what's up? Reflex is delaying. Checking the chat. So, hey Michael, how are you? I hope you're doing well. Thank you for joining. I think you were also around in the previous live stream, and I highly appreciate that you managed to be around for all that time. You know, I love live streams because through live streams, you get to have a conversation with your viewers compared to when you just edit a video and then upload it, because when you do that, you can sometimes get caught up and not even reply to comments and stuff like that. So I think I'll be doing this to make sure that I'm more consistent on YouTube, because I realized I've been so busy, I've been caught up in doing very many things, and therefore I haven't been as consistent as I was. If we're to look at my YouTube channel, I was creating quite a lot of videos when I had started, and I think I need to get back to that. I feel like I'm slacking on doing YouTube, and I don't want to do that again. I want to keep consistent, show up for you guys, try to learn as much as I can while also creating more videos. Yeah. So we are live, and yeah, so you see my upload schedule hasn't been that consistent, and these live streams may be the ones that are going to be important. So let's go ahead. You're not that late. In fact, we are trying to build. So there is this issue that we always fall in when you are installing, and basically people has to install multiple versions of something. It's kind of weird, and I sometimes do not know how to deal with it. So if you know how to deal with it, then kindly help me understand how they deal with it. But it kind of gives me headache every time I see. So you see, you need to provide a dependency resolver with stricter constraints to reduce runtime. So I guess I have to Stack Overflow that, and then I see why it's taking longer. Let me just copy it and then paste it right here. And now I guess you can also see what we go through in creating these videos. You have to, videos are scripted and you don't see what happens in the background. But for live streams, you can at least see that someone is falling into errors and all that stuff. And that's beautiful, because then you get to see that us content creators are not that good of programmers like we pretend to be. So I guess I have to rerun this with this specific argument. If I used it in a certain project and it worked, so I'll say pip install, and then I'll say reflex. I guess I've written it badly, so I'm going to go ahead and add it. And then to go ahead and install our reflex. This thing depends on quite a lot of packages, but the good thing is whenever we install packages and then the installation gets cancelled or interrupted, then Python will have those in cache, just like you see right here. So we won't have to wait for them to get downloaded again. Yeah. So let's see these being installed. I hope this time it just installs very fast. Let me grab some water. Okay, so it seems like we are being successful this time. Okay, so now that Reflex has been installed, let's go ahead and try to freeze this to requirements. So txt file, so that we can know which exact versions of the dependencies we are going to use if this project is maybe got by someone in the future. So to do that, we shall say pip3 freeze, and then we shall point to requirements.txt. So in requirements.txt, we're having our packages that we've installed, and these are all the dependencies that Reflex depends on. Being a full stack framework, it depends on things that can help us to build both the front end and the back end, and that's why you see quite a lot of packages right here. So I'm going to close that, and the first thing we're going to do is to set up a Reflex project. Now to have our Reflex project installed, the next thing will always be to initialize a project. And the way we do that is by saying reflex init, and this is going to go ahead and set for us up a project structure that is going to be for our Reflex application. And I'm going to try to explain this and kind of walk you through the various directories that are involved, as we're going to see in a moment. So at first it's going to install Node, and it's going to install Node version 18. That's simply because I do not have a Node version installed on my machine. But I think this is not going to take that long. Okay, it seems like our Node has been installed. So I'd like to know, guys, what experience have you guys got while working jobs? I mean, how many of you guys have worked at startups, and how many have worked full time at companies and contract work? I'd like to know your experience, and yeah, let's talk about it. Meanwhile, our project is being initialized right here. I'm seeing a new message from Denny Django Man. Wow, that's a nice name. So I'm here from Kenya. Let me tell this guy Jonathan is a savior. Wow, I really appreciate your comments. Thanks for watching. Thank you. You guys are the reason that's why I create these videos. In fact, when I started this project, I was sort of discouraged because I thought I could not I thought I could not create content that would be watched by other people, but I'm really thankful that you guys watch and like my content. It seems like this live stream is going to take long, but the good thing is that it will be available on YouTube, and when that happens, then we can be able to all come back and watch this when it's uploaded to the internet as a video. So the web directory has been installed, and we've been prompted to choose a template for the web application that we're going to build. So the first one is going to be the blank template, an empty project without anything, simply a minimal project that we can start with. And then we can also have option 2, which is for creating a project with a dashboard, and that will sort of like bring up a dashboard with tables, graphs, and so on. Then we shall have a chat application. In case you want to build something like ChatGPT, then you can use this ChatGPT template clone. We have one with a sidebar that will help us to create a project with a sidebar. But since we are not interested in all of those, I'll stick to option number 0, and then I'll press enter, and our directory, our folder structure will be set up right here. You'll forgive me. So the first thing is to always understand what is going on right here. So in our folder, we have set up a simple Reflex project, and I'm going to be explaining this right now. So the first folder is going to be the .web folder, and what is inside this folder is going to be whatever Reflex is going to compile from our Python into the JavaScript code. Now remember, the language that is native to the front end or the web browser is going to always be JavaScript. And whenever we build our app using Python, we are not going to be able to render the Python inside our web browser. So what Reflex does is to compile all our JavaScript, all our Python code into JavaScript, and it works with Next.js to be able to compile our components we've written in Python into real Next.js, Radix, or Chakra UI components. Now, if you're wondering what I'm saying that Reflex allows us to build front-end components, but these front-end components are built on Reflex, on UI libraries, which are either Chakra UI or Radix. So for our case, we are going to be using mostly Radix components, but there are scenarios in which you may also use Chakra UI or even build on top of other UI elements. So for now, the web folder is going to look like this. This is basically a simple project folder for a Next.js application. You have where you place the components, a public folder, styles, utils, and so on. And that is all I can say about the web folder. But it's simply where the front-end code or the JavaScript code is always going to reside. So in the assets folder, we are going to find everything that we may need to expose. And this may be images that we render on the front end, icons, fonts, some stylings, and some JavaScript that you may want to link and expose on our web application. Now, this is the virtual environment I created, but once you create a Reflex project, then you'll have the main project folder, which is going to be our Reflex blog right here. So this is where all our code for this specific tutorial is going to be. So then we shall have the main file, which is going to be our Reflex blog. Since the project is called Reflex blog, then we're also going to have our main file being called Reflex blog. So we shall have a folder called Reflex blog, and this is going to act like our source folder. We're going to place all the code that we're going to write in Python for our UI components or our logic on the front end. And we shall also include our API code just inside here in our Reflex blog folder. So we have a .ignore file or .gitignore, and this file is going to be one to help us to add all things that we may not want in our source control. Requirement.txt, of course, we've created that. rxconfig.py, this is where we're going to add our configurations for the application. Now, once we've looked at the folder structure, I guess it's time that we run our app. So to run our app, the first thing we're going to do is to go in our terminal right here, where we created our virtual environment and installed Reflex. And then we shall start by first of all running our app with Reflex run. So this is going to start our app, and it will install all dependencies because we have just created our app, and this .web folder lacks one specific node modules folder, which is very important, of course, for JavaScript. So it's going to compile and install all the front-end packages, and then it will create that node modules folder for the front end, and then it shall go ahead and resume to run our app and expose it on a certain port. So while that is going on, I'm seeing a question. I was nothing in Django, but your content helped me a lot. 2 years of experience now, though not yet to opportunities. I could like to know more, you, Mr. Jonathan, outside this platform. Nice content. Wow, thank you so much, Denny. So knowing me is not hard. In fact, one guy who is very easy to access. My email is on my you can access me via email. You can send me an email. My email is in my description of my YouTube channel. So if you can go ahead and look at it, you can shoot me an email and we get to talk in real life and stuff like that. I'm also looking forward to getting to create this in-person consultation or coaching programs for an affordable amount, just to be able to support my expenses while creating these videos. Because to be honest, it's expensive to create YouTube videos, and I think it's sort of like something you wouldn't do if you're not really passionate about it, but we just choose to do it, and you guys make it worthwhile. So the internet may be acting up and the front-end packages are taking longer, but we can still have a chat in the chat. So Denny, if you want to talk to me, please do. Thank you for watching. I highly appreciate, and yeah, let's move on. I wonder how many people are watching at this point, because I feel like it's quiet in the chat. Let me just go to my YouTube channel. Five people are watching. Kindly say hi in the chat. I'd like to know where you are, where you're from. I even created that topic of talking about our experience working as software developers wherever we work from. So yeah. So I created a video about my experience working at a startup, and yeah, I worked at a startup for like 6 months, and I was working on a service in Flask, and it was a really good experience. Skill wise, I got to learn quite a lot of stuff that I could not know on my own. So it was a very good experience. I really enjoyed learning. I think I'll add timestamps to this to make it easy for whoever will watch this video in the future, because I think it will be sort of hard to follow through with all these conversations. And I think that's beautiful about live streams. Like with live streams, you have all the freedom to have a chat, to have a conversation, while also getting to teach. By the way, I have an announcement to make, so make some noise. Hi, I hope you're doing well. Where are you from? So our app is even running, which is beautiful, but this has taken quite a lot of time. So I'll go to our localhost 8000, which is actually localhost 3000. And in our localhost 3000, that's the port on which our front-end app is going to be running. But we're also going to have the app on which our backend is going to be running. So when this runs, I think it has to do some sort of compilation on the front end to render our app, and this is what we have for now. But we can also check out what is on the back end. So whenever we run Reflex run, what we are doing is to run both a front-end application and a web API in the background, and this is managed through WebSockets, as you're going to see. So let me kind of give you an explanation about how this works. Whenever you perform an action, when you're writing your code, this server is going to restart and the changes will reflect in the front end. And this is happening due to WebSockets. So this app right here, the one that we opened up on localhost 3000, I think I'm confusing myself. Let me close Firefox for now so that we go to localhost 3000. So on localhost 3000, we're going to have a front-end app. But this front-end app is going to be listening to whatever is going to go on the back end through WebSockets. So whenever we save, the event is going to be triggered, and therefore the server is going to, whatever is going to happen here on the front end is going to reload, and then we shall see all those changes. If we stop our server or any change happens on our back end, then these WebSockets are going to throw an error, just like we shall see when we're going on. So also get a default theme just like this. So we can copy this theme and add it to our application. So we can choose to either have light mode and also dark mode and all that front end stuff. But the most important thing is components. So if we go within our project right here, we have our project and it's a Python package, just like you see by the unique.py file right here. We have a simple file, and this is where all the code for rendering this specific page is, but we're going to customize it in a moment. So let us begin by looking at this code. In the previous video or the previous live stream, we kind of walked through what each of these does. We looked at the app instance, which is the Reflex app instance we have right here, and we also looked at how we are rendering this page. So a page is simply a Reflex component with content, and the way we add it to our Reflex app is by simply saying app. So if we went ahead and said app.add underscore page, and then we created, let's say, our page, this will be something that we shall have to define as a Reflex component. So let's go ahead and define that. So if we went ahead and said, let's say def our page is going to return a Reflex component, then we shall return some Reflex code. Now a Reflex component is simply anything that can be shown on the web page. It can be a page, it can be something like a paragraph, it can be a button, it can be a heading, and so on. And all these are majorly Radix components. Now Radix is a UI framework, just like I said before, and for us to create a component, all we have to do is to say something like Rx. Now in this case, I'm going to create a box. A box is similar to what we may see as a div in normal HTML. So we're going to create a box, and this box is going to basically have a paragraph. So the paragraph is rx.text, and this is going to be something like our page. Now once we have our page created, we have to add it to our app by calling the add page method. And once we've called the add page method, then the next thing is going to be to specify the page, which is going to be a Reflex component. And right after doing that, then we have to also specify a route on which we want that page. So in this case, we'll just come and say that our route is going to be slash, and then let's just say whenever we visit the page of our page, we want to be able to see what we've created as our page right here. So our page is going to be rendered on the slash our page route. So if I go ahead and save, then our server will restart right here, and when it restarts, then we shall see those changes happening here on the front end. Now let's go back to the chat right here and see. Make some noise. Welcome from Morocco. I'm also from Uganda. Peace and love from Uganda. So our server is going to restart, something that it's still compiling. So every time we save, it compiles, and whatever we've written is going to show up on the front end. So it's sort of like a live reload or a live reloading, something of the sort. So once this is done, I'll get rid of the page, and then we start building this from scratch. I don't know if this is done. If I refresh, I'm going to try to move to the page of our page. So I'll say localhost 3000 / our page, and then I'll see if our page is going to show up. So if I go to localhost 3000 / our page, then we shall see that our page is going to be rendered, and this is the content on our page. So that's basically how you add pages. So if we wanted another page, let's say the create post page, we can just come right here and say that we need another page called create post. So I'm just going to say this is going to be the, let me just call it the create post page, and this is going to say create post. And once we've been able to add that, I can just simply come and add that page by saying app.add page create post, and then we shall be able to access it on the /create post route. So if I save, our server will compile, and then we shall be able to see that. So this is what happens when you have an error. Whenever you have an error, you'll be getting that, because then the WebSocket connection to the backend will break, and therefore you'll not be able to see what you need. So just like you see right here, this is a Next.js app on the front end. So if we went ahead and access the page that we called the create post page, now we shall also see the same thing. If we go to /create post, oh, this is actually not going to be found. Let me close this. So if we went to localhost 3000 / create post, now we shall see that this is going to go ahead and render our create post page just like you see right here. Now to begin, let's go ahead and make this a little bit interesting. Now what I'm going to do is to go ahead and talk about components and show you what components are and how we can use these components. So we're going to begin by first of all structuring our app. So I'll come right here and create a new folder, and I'm going to call this folder components. And this is where all the components that we're going to use for this video are going to be. So I'm going to have a folder called components, and to mark it as a Python package, I'm going to add the danda init.py file. Once I've created the danda init.py file, now I'll go ahead and break our app into components, and all the components will be defined inside here. Now I'm also going to have a folder which I'm going to call the pages folder, and this pages folder is also going to be a Python package. So I'll just have to create a danda init.py file to mark it as a package. So I'll say danda init.py. Once I've been able to do that, now I think this is what we shall need for now. Now what we're going to be building is a simple blogging application, and we're not going to make it so complex, but all we're going to do is to try to use it to explore some of the features, just like I noted down right here. So for now, let's start by looking at components. A component is the most basic UI element that you can display on the web page. For example, in this case, we have a page being a component, and what this code right here does is to define a function that's going to render our UI elements. So this function right here is going to render the text that we have on this page. If we went ahead and modified some of this, we can maybe remove some of this text. So what I'll do is to go and get rid of whatever we have on this page, and then we shall simply return rx.box, and in this case we shall go ahead and return something. So I'll say let's just say this is going to be our home page. So we shall say rx.text, which I said this is going to be a paragraph. So we shall just call this our index page. And once we've been able to do that, if I save, let's have a restart or compile, and our UI will change right here. So let us wait for the compilation step to be finished. Now don't worry guys, this is going to take quite a lot of time, but I'm going to make it a point to add timestamps at the video so that those who watch it in the future will be able to catch up and watch the entire thing. So now we've created our index page. Just in case we wanted to go ahead and add some navigation, we can then create a navbar, and that navbar will be a component. So for now, what we have is just a single page, which is going to be our home page. Now let us go ahead and put all these pages in the pages folder, just the one that we created right here. So I'm going to go ahead and remove all of this, and what I'll do is to not have any page within our main project folder or our main project file. What I'm going to do is to go within our page. So I'll create index, or let's just call it home.py, and this is where we shall have our Reflex component. Now to import everything from Reflex, we shall just simply say import Reflex as Rx, and once we've done that, then we're going to simply return what we want to be rendered from a certain page, but we do this by defining a simple function that returns the UI elements. So to do that, I'm going to come right here and say def, and I'll call this index. I guess I have to make this text a little bit larger. So in this case, this is going to return our rx.component. So Reflex highly depends on type hints, which is a modern feature in Python, and it helps you just simply understand what these are going to be. So one way in which you can define or write code that documents itself is by using type hints, since we do not have to guess the type of a specific variable or a specific function or something of the sort. So in this case, what we have is a function that's going to return a Reflex component, and let's just return rx.box, and basically this is a div, and this div is going to have a simple paragraph of index page. So when I go ahead and save, then we have to import that within our main project folder. So let's get rid of some of the stuff that we have in here. So we're just simply going to go ahead and import what we have. We shall also get rid of these other pages that we created. So to add the index page that we've created in our home right here, all we have to do is to go ahead and import it. So we shall do that from our project, which is Reflex blog. We shall just say from Reflex blog.pages. In this case, we can go ahead and let's say import our home. So we can say from home, we are going to go ahead and import our index page. And once we've imported that, then it is going to be added successfully onto our app. So if we go ahead and save, then when we refresh our page, of course, we shall see our index page being shown just like we have it right here. So let's go ahead and make this a little bit interesting. Now, every app is going to have some sort of navigation that will help us to move to different parts of the application. So to create our navigation, we are going to begin by creating the navigation component. So I'll come to the components folder right here, create a new folder. Let me just call it a file, and that is going to be our navbar.py. So our navbar is simply going to be that navigation that's going to contain these various links to lead us to the entire application. So let's begin by importing Reflex. So we shall say from import Reflex as Rx. And once we've imported Reflex as Rx, now let's define our navbar. So you need to come and say def navbar, and this navbar is going to return a Reflex component. So we shall say return rx.component, and once we return our component, now we're going to return a box, and a box is simply a div, just like I explained. Now in this case, what I'm going to do is to split this up into two sections. Now this is going to be what is going to be on our extreme left. So we shall say rx.box, and then I'll also have another box. So these are two divs, but I want to make them sort of like have a display of flex. So I can achieve this by using an rx.box component, but there's also what is called an h stack. So an h stack is one way in which you can horizontally align these elements to be sort of like in a flex fashion. So what you can do is to also add other attributes. So each component is going to have attributes, or what we may call props from the React world. So this may be things like that we add on basic HTML elements, like let's say the style attribute, the name attribute on elements, and stuff like that. We can also add classes, IDs, and so on. So let's begin by adding classes to this. Now if we want to add a class on a Reflex component, all we have to come and do is to do like this. So we're going to just say class name. So in this case, we may choose to call this, let's say, our nav. And that is simply adding a class to this specific div, which is our rx.box. And this is going to mark this as a div with a class name of nav. Now, we may also go ahead and say something like, let's say, like this div is going to be, let's just say, we can maybe call this our nav left, and then we can also have this as our nav right. So we're going to create a class name of, let's say, nav right. So these are going to be two divs, but we want the one that's going to be on the left to have our, let's just call it our title, because we don't have any logos, but we can also add a logo. So to add a logo, it's going to be as simple as getting something and then adding it to the assets folder, then exposing it. And I think I'm going to show that in a moment. But let us first begin by adding some text right here. So we may call this, let's say, our blog. Or let me just add our simple blog. And once we've been able to do that, I'll add a comma right here. And this is going to be our simple blog. Then on the left, I may have links to the different pages. So in this case, a link is basically through rx.link. So every time we're creating a link, we're going to call the rx.link component, and that will take in the specific attributes that an anchor tag may have. Those may be the href and then the text, but in this case, we can just add the text. Now, keep a notice of how you write these components, because most of the times you may land into errors, but those errors are going to be mostly coming from how you define these components. For example, in this case, text is not an attribute that you may want on a link, and it's not an attribute that is present on a link. But the way you may add that is by adding it as a positional argument to this, because all of Reflex components are going to be functions, and therefore you have to keep note of how you pass in the various attributes. So in this case, we want to say that this is going to be our home, comma, and then the rest of the other keyword arguments are going to follow. So the order is always going to be positional arguments first, and then keyword arguments are going to follow. So in this case, we have created a link with our home page. Now, if we had something like, let's say, an about section, we can go ahead and also add that. So let me just experiment and add that. So I'll just say rx.link, and in this case, we shall add our about. Now we shall call this route/about. Now keep in mind that for now, we do not have an about page. So what we have is simply our index page, and it's present on this specific route, which is our root route. Now I'm going to go ahead and save. And if we want this to be shown on our front end, then all we have to do is to import this navbar component and then include it in our home page. So just like the way you write your normal React or Angular components or VJS components, Reflex allows you to write this component, and it gives you the ability to reuse them across your entire application. So to reuse our navbar, all you have to do is to go ahead and import it within our home page. So to do that, we shall just come right here and say from, so this is going to be from our Reflex blog. Sorry for this. So this is going to be from our Reflex blog dot components. In this case, we shall import our navbar component. And once we've imported it, then let's go ahead and add it above everything that will be present on this page, and then save. Another thing we can do is to add a class that's going to make this page appear like a full page, so that we have things like the minimum height or the maximum height and stuff like that. So I'll just add a class name to this, and let's say I'm going to call this, I'm going to just give this a class name of page. So once this is done, our page is done, and it also includes our navbar component. If I go ahead and save, then we shall notice that our navbar will be added. But for now, the app has to first of all go ahead and compile. So for now, we are saying that our module object is not callable. And I think that mistake is because we have just called the module navbar and we have not accessed the navbar component, which is this. So we needed to do something like from reflexblock.components dot the file in which the navbar component is, then we go ahead and import the navbar component. So I'm going to go ahead and save, and our server is going to restart right here. And once it restarts, then we shall be able to reflect those changes. But let me kind of stop it and then we run it again. Okay, so hey Jamil, how are you, man? I'm really glad that you've joined the live stream. By the way, let me use this opportunity to talk about Pycon Uganda. Pycon Uganda is an annual developer conference for Python developers, and it's going to occur in Uganda this year. So the last one was last year, and we are now having the next one this year. And if you're interested, you are free to attend. I'm going to put the link to the website right here in the chat. So ug.pycon.org. That's the website. In case you want to get more information about the event, kindly check the website. Kindly book your ticket down there. So that will be very interesting. So let me actually pin this so that you guys can see. Let me just actually remove this and then pin it so that you guys can be able to know about the Pycon. So book, let me just say book your ticket for this year's Pycon Uganda. Thank you, Jamil, for actually reminding me. This live stream started weirdly. So I'll just add the link to the website. If you want to buy a ticket and come from wherever you come from, we're going to talk about everything Python. If you're doing data science, if you're doing web development, scientific computing, and all that stuff, but you're using the Python programming language, this is a very good chance for you to interact with the Python developer community that is in Uganda, my home country. So let me add the link right here, and I'm going to pin this message so that you guys can see it, and I guess I'll have to even talk more about it in my coming videos. This is going to be ug.pycon.org. So go ahead and check the website. So this is going to be ug.pycon.org. It's the website for the Pycon. Book yourself a ticket, and yeah, I'll see you at Pycon. So this is my pin message right here. So our app is running on localhost 3000, and if we go back right here, we now have this specific layout created for us. So we have a page which is our home page, and on that home page we've added a navbar section and the main content. So but this is kind of organized, so we need to add some styling. Now the way we style these Reflex components is very similar to how we style normal HTML, CSS. Basically all we have to do is to give this a class, just like you've seen right here, and then we go in the CSS and add that. Another approach is to go ahead and use the style attribute on each Reflex component. So the way we do that is by saying style, and this style is going to be a dictionary, and it's going to contain any style that you may want to add onto a Reflex component. So in this case, if you want to style this page, and let's say give it height of 100 view heights, we may do something like, let's say that the main height of this page, you may add this like this, but you're going to see how Reflex is going to react to this kind of styling. So you may write the style, which is mean height, and then give it a value of, let's say, 100 view heights. And the moment we do this, our page is going to increase in its view height. So if we save, we can also give this a background color for testing. Just let's say we're going to just say that our background color is going to be, let's say, black, and we save. Our server is going to restart and recompile whatever we've been working on, and then we shall notice those changes in the browser. Guess why it's not, I don't know why it's scared of taking long to reflect that change. Okay. So I guess the UI is recompiling, and then we shall see those changes. So for now, we are looking at components, and we've looked at pages and components, but we're going to be looking at pages and components more. And yeah, please stick around. This is going to get more interesting. So I currently have 5 people watching. If you haven't said hi, please say hi. Yeah. So our UI has compiled. If you go back right here and you try to access our page, I don't know why it's not reloading, but now you can notice that this entire page or our entire viewport is now having a background color of black, meaning that our styles have been effective. So let's go ahead and change this. So if we want the styles to be included in a CSS file, then all we have to do is to go within our assets folder, which is present right here in our project. So within the assets folder, you can create a simple folder or a subdirectory to that specific assets directory. And let's say we can call this our styles. Now here, let's say we have a simple main.css file, and let's go ahead and write some stylings in here. So if we did something like, let's say we want all elements or everything within our app to not have a padding, so we can say that our padding is going to be 0 and our margin is going to be 0. And then let's say we can also have the box sizing set to border box. If we try to do this, then we shall need some way to expose it to our front end. And the way we're going to do that is by going to where we created our app instance. So when you go back to our main project folder right here, we need to locate our app instance, which we created as our app right here. And we shall add one specific argument to this specific instance. So the argument is always going to be the style sheets argument. So when we say style sheets, in this case, this is going to point to a list of style sheets, and then we shall have to add the path to whatever style sheet that you may want to include. Now this can be things like fonts, external CSS, and stuff like that. But for now, we're going to be using CSS from our assets directory. For us to be able to add that CSS, all we have to do is to point to the directory in the assets folder in which that file is. So let's say our main.css was in the assets folder, then all we needed to do was to just come right here and say main.css, and that will be just enough to include that style. But since it's present in assets and then /styles and then main.css, then all we have to do is to say something like, let's say we have to say slash and then styles and then /main.css to say that this is in the assets directory, but it is found within the styles directory, and then it is main.css. So that's basically how Reflex allows you to style elements when using your custom CSS. But you can also write radix components which can be organized and styled according to your needs. So if I go ahead and save, our app right here will go ahead and recompile, but I want to remove that style prop that we added onto our page. So I'll go to home and then remove what we have here. And when we do that, our app is going to recompile, our UI will recompile, and then we shall see how that is going to look like in a minute. I don't know why this is being slow, but I guess to code this thing to the end. I hope you guys will stick around. Kindly feel free to send me a message in the chat. It will help me code because this live stream is going to be long. Okay, so now this is what we have. We've been able to style this according to what we want. So now let's go ahead and use our styles to go ahead and set up this navbar component because it's looking really weird. The first thing we're going to do is to head over to our CSS and we're going to add the stylings according to the class names that we give to our components. So in navbar.py, we have our reflex component right here, and we have the external container being called nav. So if we go ahead and add that, we shall say dot nav, and then we shall style it. Let's say it's going to have a display of flex, and it's going to have a display of flex, and then we can have, let's say, justify content to space between, just to space out the items. Now remember, these are grouped into two containers, which are basically the nav left and then the nav right. So if we went ahead and saved, our server will recompile our UI, and then those changes will be reflected right here. So we now see that the content is being displayed in such a way. So our navbar is showing up like this. Oh, it's going to reload. Let it reload, and then we shall see what we shall have. So this is how our navbar looks like currently. We have our simple blog and then our UI basically being shown like this. So our navbar is laid out in this way, but we want things to be a little bit organized. So what I'm going to do is to go ahead and set up, or let me just say this is going to be display flex and then space evenly, so that we actually see this not being thrown so much to the end of whatever container they are in. Okay, Cyrus Mwendra. I'm Cyrus from Kenya, loving this. Thanks for watching. Sally Rock, greetings from Chile. Wow, I'm being watched from, is it South America? That is very interesting. I'm in my room here in Bombo, Uganda. I'm on a certain village, but the beauty is there is internet on that village. Yeah, so basically what we've done is to add class names, and now we're trying to set up styles for that specific component based on the class names that we gave. So if I say space evenly, oh, things have not yet reflected on the front end, so I guess I'll have to be saving on the front end, and then the UI will have to reflect or show those changes. Now that's the disadvantage of dealing with these technologies that are somehow newish, because then you have to deal with. Now, I'll be honest, I've programmed a web app in this framework, and there is no limit to what you can do with this framework. The only problem comes from updates that this framework gets. So just like we are using this specific version, which is, let me have a look. So it may be using something like Reflex version 0.4.9, and then tomorrow morning we shall be told that version 0.5 has come out, and therefore we have to upgrade to version 0.5. That is the thing about using cutting edge technology. You have to always be on the lookout for updates, fixes, and stuff. So when you go back right here, we see that everything is kind of it's being displayed like this, which is no problem since we are building a very simple app. So let me go ahead and add some other styles. So I'm just going to quickly do this. So we're going to add some padding. So let's add some padding on the left, and that's on the, so I'm going to do top, bottom, left, right. So top, we want to pad this to, let's say, let me just use EM. So I'll say we're going to pad this top, bottom, 1 EM, and left, right, 2 EM. Now, if you don't understand CSS, that is up to you. Sorry, I did not mean that. But I'm not also an expert at CSS. But what I'm doing is to do padding, top, bottom, 1 EM, and then left, right, 2 EM, so that we kind of have some spacing of the content from the top and the bottom, and then from the left and the right, so that we have the navbar having a certain sort of height that's determined by that specific padding. That's what I'm trying to do right here. So the problem is whenever we save the styles, nothing happens on the front end, but when we save where the components are, that's when the server is going to realize the changes and then make a change. So I think that's something that they'll have to work on. All right. How is Chile? Tan Nicholas, how is Chile? So now we can see that the padding has been applied. Now let's go ahead and style the content that we have inside our component. So I'm going to split this up so that I do not get confused. So I'll put the styling right here, and then I'll put the nav barcode right here. So we have styled the nav container. Now let's go ahead and style this nav left container. So the nav left container is going to be selected with the .nav and then dash left. So this is going to have, let's just say we're going to add some, are we going to add some padding? I don't know, I'm not that a front-end developer, but let's just make the content there to have font weight of bold. So I'll say nav p, since that is rx.text, which is a simple paragraph. In this case, I'll just say that we're going to have a font weight of bold, and we're going to go ahead and save that. And then we can also have these links to have a certain style. So what I'm going to do is to make sure that they are not so near each other, just like we have them right here. So to do that, what I'm going to do is to go ahead and select them with their class. So I'll say nav. This is going to be nav right, but in this case I want to select the links, which are going to be our anchor tags, and in this case I'll just give them a margin left. I'll just give them margin left, or let's say 20 pixels, and that will be just enough for them to be pushed away from each other. Now for these changes to reflect, I guess I have to make some saving on my front end so that anything that is in the assets directory will not affect the server so much, and I wonder why that is still happening. So when you go right here, the server is going to restart, and then our styles will reflect. So we have this font weight bold, and these are kind of spaced. Now I guess I have to make this a little bit big so that you guys can see. So we have home page, home, and then about, but the about page is not found. If we click it, it's going to basically lead us to not found, so we do not have that page, and this is using Next.js. So if we go back, I'm going to simply go ahead and rename that specific page to create post. So in this case, we're going to say create post, and once we've been able to do that, then I'm also going to add the link to the create post page. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and once I save, then we're going to go ahead and create the create post page. I'm going to come to pages, create a new file, which I'm going to call create post.py. So it's going to be create post.py. I have to remove that and then press enter. Now in this case, we're going to go ahead and do the same thing. We're going to import our reflex as reflex. Let me close whatever is on this side. So we shall import reflex as reflex, and then we shall define our component for creating a post. So we shall say this is going to be a create post page, and this is simply going to return an rx component. So I'll say reflex.component. Oh, have imported reflex as reflex. So let me go ahead and say import reflex as rx, and then I'll return the component. So once I've imported, returned the component, now let's just say this is going to have the nav bar and then simple paragraph with create post. So we have to also import the nav bar component. So shall I just come right here and say from reflexblog.components.navbar, we shall import our navbar. And then after saving, I'm going to head over to our home page, or actually our main project folder, our main project file, and then import that specific navbar component. So to do that, I'll say from reflex blog dot, in this case we shall add our page, which is the create post page. So it's going to be, I'm going to be getting some auto completion because of the tool I'm using. So Tab9 is a tool, I highly recommend it. It helps you code faster because it gives you these AI suggestions, and most of the times they are accurate. So I'm going to go ahead and add this page. So I'll say app. So this is going to be app dot add page, and in this case we shall point to the create post page. So once we've added that page, then you're also going to add the route on which that page is going to be. So we shall say route is going to be /create_post. And I'm going to go ahead and save that. So when I save, the server is going to restart or recompile the UI. And when you head over here, we have simple blog home and then /create_post. So if you try to navigate to the /create_post page, it's not yet found, and I think the reason for that is because the server hadn't yet restarted. But in case it restarts, therefore we shall see that this is going to be found. So if we head over to create post, it's going to take us to the create post page. If we go to our home page, it's going to take us to our index page. So you see how smooth it's just transitioning in between the pages. Now this UI is totally rendered by JavaScript, and that's why we're having this interactivity that when we click on home, we are on home. If we click on post, we go over to the post page. And this is amazing. Now let's go ahead and try to set up our page or our main content. Now let's sort of create a main layout for our specific application. So to do that, what I'm going to do is to come right in our code, and within our pages, now each page is going to have a class name of page, but then I want to go ahead and also create a box in which our main content is going to be in. So I'm going to sort of like cut, and then I'll create a div, and I'm going to give this a class name. So let me just say rx.box, and in this case I'll say class name. Our class name in this case is going to be our, let's just give it a class name of main, and then we place whatever content is going to be on the page inside main. So that's going to be our create post, and then we shall do the same thing for our home page. Now our home page will have the navbar, it will have the main section, which is going to be our rx.box, and this rx.box is going to have our content for that specific page, which is basically for now just the paragraph with the text of index page. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and when I save, now we shall have a consistent layout on all our pages. Now let's go ahead and add some styling to this to make it a container that's more organized. So to do that, what I'm going to do is to go, first of all, add the class name of main, which I had forgotten. And once I've been able to do that, I'll head over to our styling. I'm going to press Ctrl P, that will lead me to the files, and then I'll get started with the styling. So to style this, what I'm going to do is to add .main, since I'm selecting the class name, and I'm going to specify that .main is going to have width of, let's say, 80% of the entire viewport, and then we shall also have margin 0 and then auto. If we save, we shall now save some of the code, because none of this is going to change how the UI looks. What is going to change is going to be the component code. So if we go ahead and refresh, I think our server is kind of recompiling the UI. This is taking long, but I think if you're using a stronger machine, then it will be somehow faster compared to my weak machine right here. So we now see that those changes have reflected. So if we navigate, we can now see home page, and then this is going to be the create post page, and you can have as many pages as you may want. That's the beauty about this framework. So for now, we've looked at how to create components, we've looked at how to add pages, we've also looked at some of the basics of styling. Now let's go ahead and look at how we can basically make use of components that we've created how we can reuse components. So let's go ahead and first of all think of how we're going to build this. So let's say this is a simple blogging application. We're going to have a list of posts rendered on our home page, and the way we're going to do that is to have a post as a component, hoping that you guys can see me. Can you see me? Because it seems like there's some shaking that has been going on the camera. I hope you guys can still see me. Can you see me? So yes, I think Chile is a decent country, but the education is really bad and expensive. YouTube is the best university. Thanks for all the knowledge you share. Thank you so much, Tan Nicholas. Thank you for watching my videos. I don't know if I'm still being watched. Let me try to pull up OBS and see if I'm still being watched, or my camera is not yet. Yeah, my camera is still working. A minute, please. Let me try to get out for a moment. All right, guys, I'm back. Yeah, I'm back. I had gone to grab some food. It's currently 11 p.m. in my country, so at that time, if you haven't got what to eat, then it's too late. So I've got some food. It's right here. So now we have our pages. Let's go ahead and think of how to render a list of post components. So just like I was saying that Reflex is based off components, just like any other React, Angular, Vue application. You divide your app into components that you can then reuse to fit wherever you may want to have them within your app. So the component that we're going to look at is the post component, and that post component is going to be dynamic. By dynamic, I mean we're going to have it being rendered multiple times with different data, and that data is going to be coming from our backend. But since we are not developing the backend for now, we are going to be majorly relying on dummy data, and then that dummy data is going to be something that's going to be dynamic that we shall have to look at. So I'm going to try to get that data on my GitHub. I think I kept it within a private directory where I was sort of like practicing this app. So I'm going to go to GitHub, and then I'll head over to that specific blog that I built, and then I'll have to get the code just to pick up the data that I was using for that specific part. Or I think I don't have that data. I'll just have to manually create it, and we see how that works. So let's first of all create the component. So when you have a list of, let's say, data, let's just create that data, and I'll create a certain page. Let me just create a page or a file in here and call it, let's say, our post data.py. So post data.py is going to be sort of something that we can have in a database. So think of a database as a collection of multiple records or multiple rows of data, and these rows have columns that store information about a specific entity. Now, in this case, we are storing data about posts, and we haven't yet created a database. So this is where we have to first of all think of the model of the data that we're going to keep within our database. So let's start by creating a list. So these are going to be our posts. Something is weird here. So these are going to be our posts, and this is going to be a list of dictionaries. So think of this as our in-memory database. And I've been blessed, but I'm not going to do the auto-completion for now because I need this to have some extra fields. Now what I'm going to do is to add the fields. So we're going to start with the name, with the title. So the title of a post is going to be some dummy lorem ipsum text. And then we can also have, let's say, the post body. So the body is also going to have some lorem ipsum text and whatever. And then we shall also have the author. And then the author may be something like John Doe. And then we shall basically go ahead and add the date at which they added that post. So we can have something like the date. So let's say this post was added 2020 that. So what we need to do is to go ahead and repeat this for like 3 times. So I'll just come right here, even if I get the auto completions. This time I think they'll be helpful. So just like that, and I've got the auto completions. But let's say to make this dynamic, then we shall have some dynamic data. So I'll change what we have here. So instead of lorem ipsum, we can say Python, or let me actually make use of AI. So I'm going to use ChatGPT to generate for me random stuff. How many of you guys use ChatGPT? So I'll just come right here and say chat.openai.com, and I'll use ChatGPT to generate for me some match data. So I'll say generate a list of 10, let's say, items that look like this. So I'm going to paste that specific list of dictionaries, and then ChatGPT is going to generate from me real dynamic data. So that's how I use AI on a daily basis. In case I want to generate a random list of data or mimic how the API may return that list of data, then I just tell ChatGPT to generate it for me, and then I kind of build the UI or mimic the response of the API. So what I'm going to do is to copy what we have here, and it's what I'm going to place in our post data.py. So I'm just going to come and simply replace this with this dummy data that we've got from ChatGPT. And once I've been able to do that, now let's try to build out the post components. So to build our post component, we are first of all going to build where the posts are going to be. And once we've been able to do that, then we're going to write how we're going to render a post. So let's do that. To begin, we're going to go to our components folder right here, and then we're going to create a new folder. We're going to create this new folder and call it posts, or this actually just keep it to a Python module. So I'm just going to come and say here we're going to have posts.py, and this is going to be a normal Reflex component. So we shall begin by importing Reflex. So we shall say import Reflex as Rx, and once we've been able to do that, we shall define a function. Let's just call this the posts list, and this will also be a Reflex component. So we're going to specify that to return rx.component. So let's go ahead and make that clear. Once we've been able to do that, now we're going to come return a div or a box, and this is going to have a class name. So this is going to be a class name of posts. So I'll just come right here and say the class name in this case is going to be our posts. So let me remove this. So for now, we're going to have this class name as posts, and right here is where we're going to have our list of posts. So let me begin by adding a heading, and the way we create headings is by calling rx.heading, and then those headings will have various sizes. So I'm going to create this as our heading, and in this case we shall have list, or let's just say latest posts. So once we've been able to do that, now this is where all our posts are going to be. So we shall go ahead and add all those posts after creating the post, but we want this to be on our homepage. So let's first render it on our homepage. Now the size of this heading is going to be changed by adding the style prop or the size prop. So we can do something like size, and then size will be equal to whatever size you may want. So these range from 1 up to 9. If you want it to be an H1-ish kind of heading, then we shall have it as 9. If you want it to be sort of like closer to the topmost heading, then we shall add 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and so on. Let's just say this heading is going to be of size 6. So if I save, I want this to be on the home page, therefore I have to import it. So I'm going to say from reflexblock.components.postList, we're going to import our post list, but it seems like that is posts instead of post list. So I'm just going to change that. And then we have .posts, import posts lists. Then I'll get rid of the index page right here so that we have our post list. So there we basically make use of a component is by coming and saying, calling the function, and that will be how we get to use the component. Now if called post list and then let's say post list again, this is going to be rendered 2 times, and this is where we can reuse the component. So we are creating the component right here, but we're also going ahead and creating it just like you see right here. So I'm going to go ahead and save, and when we save, if our UI re-renders, we are going to see our list of posts being shown right here. Okay. Hi, what is the time in your country? The time in my country is 11:15, 11:15 p.m. So just like you can see, we've rendered the posts list twice. That's why we can see latest posts. If we were to create another component, we'll just create it by calling the function, creating the function, and then we go ahead and just return whatever we want to return in the UI. So for now, we have our list of posts added. Now, if we want to dynamically render a list of posts, this is where things are going to get interesting. For us to render a list of posts, we're going to make use of a certain method on our Rx, or a certain function in our Rx, which is that for each function. And what this does is to take in a list of data that you want to render, and then render it, or render a specific component depending on that specific data, just like we're going to see. Now let's go back to our post list. So in our post lists, we are going to go ahead and basically say, so we can also go ahead and do something like we can add the post data as a prop to this component, and once we've added that, then we can go ahead and use the Rx for each function. So to do that, we can say rx.forEach, and that is simply like a map you would do in a normal React application, where you map to the data and then you specify how you're going to return the component. Now for our case, we're going to say rx.forEach. So this takes in the specific data or the specific iterable, and right after doing that, it will take in the render function, which is a function to specify how we're going to return the data. So for now, we see this specific kind of text. We see that it's going to take in the post data and then use a lambda function, but let's not do a lambda function for now. Let us go ahead and just provide the post data. So this post data is going to be a list, so I'll also add some type hints to it. And once I've been able to do that, then I'm also going to go ahead and let me actually type hint this in the right way by using the typing list class. So I'll just say from typing, I'm going to go ahead and import the list class, and then I'll go ahead and specify that this is going to be a list, but this list is going to be a list of dictionaries, and these dictionaries are going to be keys of strings and strings. So for us to be able to do that, then we shall come and say this is going to be a list, but it's going to be a list of dictionaries. Now we're going to get access to the dict class as well. If you are not familiar with type hinting, it's basically one way you specify that this function is going to take in these parameters, that these parameters are going to be of a specific type, and you can go as far as mentioning the kind of items that are going to be present within those containers. For example, in this case, we have a list, but that list is going to be a list of dictionaries. If we go back to our post data, we shall note that that's what we're going to have. We're going to have dictionaries, but those dictionaries are going to have keys of strings and then values of strings. So I'll go back. When we go back to our posts.py, in this case, we're going to specify that post data is going to be a list, but this list is going to be a list of dictionaries. Let me make this a little bit bigger. So we shall say that it's going to be a list of dictionaries, but these dictionaries are also going to have keys and values. So we shall start by specifying that these keys are going to be strings and then the values are going to be strings. So it depends so much on type hints, and they make your life easy because you will know that the data that I expect is going to be a list. And this list is going to be a list of dictionaries, which are going to have keys of strings. So when we are calling this component, it won't be hard for us to know the data that it will take in to render our elements. So let's go ahead. So once we've defined the data that we want to pass in here, then we're going to specify what is called the render function. So the render function is going to be that specific function that's going to render a component based on our data. So in this case, our render function is going to be equal to a function that we shall call render post. So we can also do something like lambda, but I choose not to do that because I want the code to be more organized and more readable. So I'm just simply going to call this function render post, and once I call that function render post, I'm going to go right here at the top and then define that function render dash post, and this is simply going to go ahead and return in this case, we are going to just return rx.box. Now we shall style this later using our CSS. But what we're going to do is to create a class name. And this class name is going to have a value of, let's just say it's going to be the individual post. And in here, we shall have, let's just say the post header. So in this case, we shall say rx.box. And in this case, this is going to be our post header. So I'll give it a class name of post header. Class name, and this is going to be our post header. So let me make that post dash header, and then we shall have our footer or our body. So I'll say rx.box, and in this case we shall go ahead and add our body. So I'll just say class name is going to be our post body. So now this is enough for us to go ahead and populate with our data. So wherever we define this function that's going to return our component, we go ahead and define the item that we want to render. So in this case, we want to render a post, so it's going to take in some data of a post. Now this data is going to be a dictionary, so I'll have to specify it as a dictionary, and this dictionary is going to be one of string keys and string values. So, but you can also specify it by saying dict. So this is just being straightforward. This is being specific by basically specifying that it's going to be a dict of strings and strings, but you can also do something like dict using the dict input. The difference between this list and the inbuilt list is because this list allows us to be specific in how we are defining our typings. For example, using this list class is going to give us the ability to specify that what is going to be in the list is going to be a dictionary or whatever we may want to have within the dictionary, compared to when you may just say a plain dict or a plain list. Then this one gives us the details about the components that are going to be found within that container. So that's good. That's something good to know. So all right, let's now go ahead and add the actual content. If I look at our post data, the one that we created, let me just pull that up, just add it right here. In our post data, we're going to have 4 major things: the title, the body, the author, and the date. So if we're to go ahead and add those, we're going to come right here and we're going to create a heading. So we shall say that our heading is so let's say this is going to be our heading. Now our heading is going to contain the post title. Now since this is a post and it's a dictionary, we shall access the value with a key. In this case, we shall say post, and then we shall access the title. Then we shall add text, so we shall say rx.text, and this is going to be our text, which will have post, and then in this case, we can add maybe the author. So this is going to be the author, Bob Johnson. So what we can do is to say by, so in this case, we shall say rx.post. So you can do pretty much everything you can do with Python, including use of f-string. So in this case, I'll say by, and then I'll point to the author. So in this case, it's going to be post, and in this case, we shall say author. So that's going to be our header, and I'll add the comma to prevent that syntax error. And once we've got rid of it, then let's go ahead and render the post body. And the post body is going to be very easy. In this case, we shall start by rendering a paragraph, but this paragraph is going to be having our date at which we created the post. And I think I'll rename this to created at. I think I'm going to add that to created at instead of date. So I guess I'll just have to Ctrl Shift and L, and then I'll just call this created at rather than just calling it date. So I'll just say created at. So if I call this created at, I'll go ahead and save, and when you go to posts, in this case, this is going to be our created at. So once we've been able to do that, now let's go ahead and add our body. So I'll say rx.body, which is actually going to be rx.text. And in this case, instead of having the updated that, we are going to have this being called our body. So I'm also going to add a class name to this, and I'm going to say that this is going to have a class name of post. Let me just say post date. And yeah, that is going to be enough for us to render. Now in this case, you can notice that this render function is the one that's going to render our list of post elements or post components, and this is going to be our data. So whenever I call the post list, all we have to do is to provide the data that's going to go within that list. Now let's go ahead and do that. If we're to open our server, we shall notice that we are going to have an error, and I think that error is going to be 1. That's going to arise from the missing post data. So we need to go ahead and specify that. So I'm going to get rid of one of the terminals I have here, and then head over to where we render our post data. So that's within our posts, which is actually within our home page. So I'll have to go ahead and provide our post data right here. So let me go ahead and do that. So I'll say post data. So this is basically how you pass in props. So in this case, I'll say that our post data is going to be equal to our post data. So let's go ahead and import that. Now we shall say from Reflex blog, we shall go dot, I think this is our post data. Let's go ahead and import our post or our posts. So in this case, we shall say that our post data is going to be equal to our posts. So if we save, hope that nothing is going to break. Our server should restart. Let me just restart it again with Reflex run. So it seems like we have an error. So could not index into var of type any. I think the mistake that we're doing is to say this is returning a type of any. And I think I did the mistake. So you see, the thing is, whenever we are returning this, I think Reflex doesn't kind of allow that. But what we can do is to remove this argument and then just render the list of posts. So instead of saying, I'm just going to remove our posts from here and then add it within our posts.py. So rather than saying that we're going to render our posts list here, we are simply going to go ahead and render this post data directly within the post list. So I'll just add the import right here, and once I've added the import right here, then I'm going to go to our post data, and instead of saying post data, we shall add posts. So if I go ahead and save, I think this time it won't give us that error. So it seems like I still have that error. So let me see why it's happening. So post is a dictionary, and that is happening where we have our title. So I think this is reading the, so the thing is, every time we are dealing with data, then we have to add that data in the state, and that's something that I had forgotten. So let's start looking at state. State, just like I described at the beginning of the video, is any data that may be present within the app that may need to be sort of like consistent throughout the entire app. Let me give you an example. In an app where you have data that changes, you'd want that data to change within the app, and it should be uniform. So think of state as sort of like a database on the front end that helps you manage that data without having to change it. Normally in web applications that are rendered from the server, you're going to have data coming in from the server being rendered onto the client, and whenever I refresh the page, you are going to be losing that data. Now think of a scenario where you want this data to be kept consistent on the front end. For example, if we have our app opened on, let's say, the home page, that state should be uniform if we went to, let's say, the about or the create post page. So that's where state comes in. Now for us to be able to render a list of items, we have to first of all create the state for that specific item. Now to make things more organized, what I'm going to do is to go ahead and add, I'm going to go ahead and add a folder, and I'm going to call this the state folder. So this state folder is going to be where I'm going to place all the state functionality or all the logic that is concerned with state. So I'm just going to come and say init.py to mark it as a package, and then I'm going to start by creating the post state. So I'll say post-state.py. Now the way we create state is by creating a class that subclasses or inherits from rx.state, which is the main class from which our state is going to come from. So we're going to begin by importing Reflex. So we shall say import reflex as rx. And once we've been able to do that, then we're going to go ahead and create a class. This class is going to be our post state, so we shall say post state, and this is going to be inheriting from rx.state. Once we've been able to do this, then let's go ahead and try to define our post state. Now, at the beginning of our application, since our data is going to come from the API, we expect that we are going to have an empty list of our posts. And what we shall do is to load these posts from our backend by basically loading our page and then making the API request and then having those posts on our front end kept in this state. I know it's kind of difficult to understand, but this is what will happen. At the start, have an empty list. When you're loading the page, make a query to the API. Once the page is loaded, have those lists in the state and therefore make use of those posts. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Now, a state class looks like this. You always have to inherit from rx.state. But if you're to create a state variable, what is similar to, let's say, the use, what do they call it? The use state. Because use state basically allows you to say the initial state or the initial value of a certain state variable. To create a state variable in Reflex, all you have to do is to say something like, let's say, for us, we want to create posts. So you just have to use type hints and then annotate this to the appropriate type. So in this case, this is going to be a list. But this list is going to be, so this is where our type hinting is going to be interesting. So we're going to say from typing import list. And for our case, what we want to do is to basically create a list of dictionaries. So I think what we're going to do is the same thing we did right within our posts list. So I'm going to come right here and then I'll copy what we have here and then paste it just here. I wonder if any of you guys are still around. Kindly leave a chat. And yeah, so is this statically typed Python? No, this is not statically typed Python. What this does is to basically allow us to document our code. And anyway, there are some frameworks that will depend on type hints that much and therefore force you into types. But for most of the times when you're using type hints, they are mostly for you're not doing it for the compiler. Since Python is not that much of a strongly typed language, then I think type hints do not affect the types at runtime. Python, I think, will depend on that. Maybe change my mind on that because there are very many modifications that are coming to Python, including the just-in-time compilation. I actually read about it. I wonder if you've checked that out. But Python, starting from Python 3.12, is going to begin having that just-in-time compilation. For now, we've been having this compilation step. I think, is it compiled? I'm not that a nerd about the Python internals. But for every time we create a Python project, we're going to have this sort of like PyCache folders, which are going to be PyC files, and these are sort of like binary-ish kind of files. So this are what is going to make our Python faster, but it's mostly like sort of like byte code, and that code is going to make our Python faster. So by default, Python is not a statically typed language, and these are just type hints that some tools may request for or may demand you have within your code, but it's not statically typed Python. In fact, you can, with or without the type hints, you can still run your code. Maybe change my mind on that. I haven't read so much about this, but yeah, let's go ahead and look at this. I wonder if I've answered your question. Maybe if I haven't answered it well, then maybe make it more clear. But this is not statically typed Python. These are just type hints. And one of the benefits of using type hints is they make the code self-documented. Like you can be able to know that this is a list and it's a list of dictionaries. This is a list and it's a list of strings. It's a dictionary with keys and values of this. This is basically, that's how it works. It helps write self-documenting code. And one of the benefits of using type hints is, for example, if we create this as a list of items, it's going to be easy for us to use auto-completion when using any of the methods that are going to be present on that object. So those are some of the benefits of type hints. So I want to define this as a list, but this is going to be a list of dictionaries. Now that's where we're going to do what we had done back there. So this is going to be a list of dictionaries, but these dictionaries are going to have keys of strings and shall also have values of strings. So I'm just going to simply come right here and also add an empty list, meaning we are setting the initial state of our posts to an empty list. So once we've been able to do that, now let's go ahead and modify. I wonder if you guys can hear me clearly. I accidentally knocked the mic and may have made noise for you, but forgive me on that. So now that we've set our initial posts to an empty list, let us go ahead and set up our UI to consume this list from our state. Reflex will not read any container that is outside state, and that's why we've been getting this weird error here. Could not index into var of type any, so it doesn't recognize it because it's outside state. When you have a data source, it always has to be inside state, and that's the reason as to why I created this post state class. So for us to access this, then we're going to go to our posts and then say, so that means I'll have to remove this, and we're going to see how we shall load our page with that data. So I'm going to import our state. So I'll say from reflex blog dot state dot post state. In this case, what we're going to get is the post state class. Once we've got the post state class, then we're simply going to go ahead and get access to the posts, but it has to be through the state. So in this case, we shall say post state dot posts, and then we shall save. So let's try running our server once again. In this case, if we run, it's going to go ahead and rerun our server. Another thing I've remembered about the question I've got about statically typed Python is for statically typed Python, we are forced into not running our code. So what Python does is to help you run your code directly. But for most languages that use static typing do what is called the ahead of time compilation, which is basically create a binary executable that you finally run and then get your result. But for Python right here, we do not get such behavior. What we get is run the code, get the result. So Python determines the type of the specific variable. It determines the type of the value at runtime, which is not what the compiler does. The compiler will stop you from setting the value of a specific variable just at the compile step. We won't go beyond the compile step. So that's the difference. Now, change my mind. I do not know these things. I'm not that much of a nerd. I actually have some friends who go so much into the Python internals, but I'm not one of them. I just hope to get to that level. Yeah, that's the next question. Okay, so our server is running. Let's go back to our web app. If we refresh, now I've clicked the YouTube channel. I think this is going to be like my longest live stream because there's so much to talk about. I think I'll directly write it in here. So shall go to localhost 3000. And yeah, our UI is working. So for now, we do not have any posts because we have not yet rendered our posts. Now, Normally in a React app, you have things such as use effect. That is the React I remember. So it may have changed because React is always changing. But in a use effect hook, what you do is to call code that you want to execute when you're rendering the page. Now for Reflex, it provides for us an interesting way of running some logic when the page is being loaded. And let's look at how we do that. So in our state, we're going to go ahead and create a function or a method, but that method is going to be one to allow us to load our posts. Now, these are going to be coming from the API, and for now we just have an empty, it's not actually an empty list, we have a list of dummy data from our dictionary. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to come right in here. Oh, this is not what I want. We're just simply going to come here and define async def. So this is going to be a method to load our project. So we shall just come and say, not load projects, but load posts. So we shall say load posts, and this is going to simply go ahead and load our posts. So we can also specify this is going to return a list of posts. So we shall just say return a list of posts. So we can do the normal weird list of dictionaries, and then we shall, in this case, return our posts. So what we want to do is to modify the state of our class right here. Now, since this is a method, it's going to take in the self parameter, which is going to refer to the current object of this specific class. So when you define this method, it's going to take in self, but each of the attributes that are present on our state class are going to be accessed from self. Now in this case, what you need to do is to modify this state of posts to what we have as our post data. Now I think we imported that right here. I think we removed it, but I guess I'll have to just import it. So when you go back to our post state, I'll just say pass to avoid that noise of the errors. I'll just come and import our post data. So in this case, we shall just come and say from Reflex blog dot. Now note that I'm not using the relative imports. I'm just using the full imports. For example, if something is located in the next directory, I'll just say Reflex blog, which is the parent folder, dot until I reach where it is. So this is one of the ways I prevent circular imports. So in this case, if I say from Reflex blog dot, what I want to do is to access the data. So in this case, it's going to be the post data. I'm going to import our list of posts. And once I've been able to do that, then let's go ahead and just simply set the state to our posts. Now in this case, we shall just come and say that self dot posts is going to be equal to our posts. And that's simply what is going to happen. But you should remember that this is not yet functional, because all we do have for now is just the load posts function or method, but it's not doing anything. For us to make this functional, so that our page of our index loads with the projects, all we have to do is to head over to where we created our app instance right here, and then while we add the page, we'll just come and add one other argument, which is going to be the onload argument. So the onload argument is going to be taking in a list of whatever state functions or whatever actions you may want to perform on loading a project. Now let's say you want to go ahead and check if these people are logged in, to redirect them to that page or to redirect them to the login page. You may use that. If you want to load some data and then render it on that page, you may also add it to this list of onload functions. Now for our case, what we need is to go ahead and import the state class. So we shall say from Reflex blog dot state dot post state. We want to go ahead and import the post state class. So once we've got the post state class, now we're going to come right here and add it to our list of things we want to run at the start of the page. So we shall say post state dot load posts, and that is just enough for us to load our posts when the index page is being loaded. So I'm going to go ahead and save. Now this is going to compile our UI, and then we shall see our changes right here in the browser. By this time we expect that it's going to come back with a list of the data, just like we planned, or just like we rendered it from our data. So it's going to refresh. And in this case, we see that when the page loads, now we can see the data being returned from our dummy API, or from the dummy list of items. I hope you guys are still watching. Let me check the chat. Hello there, Ibrahima. I hope you're doing well. Where are you from? Kindly leave me a chat down there. I'm going to stream until this thing is both front end and back end, so I hope you're excited about that. Yeah. So for now, we can load our post items, just like you see right here. And this is a list, and you can do quite a lot of interesting things like adding pagination and so on, but let's keep this simple. So for now, when you go to our home page, this is what we view. When you go to our create post page, there is nothing here, but we're going to add a form so that we can be able to add posts to that specific, to our specific list of posts, or our posts list. If we go back to our home page, we load data that is coming from our dummy post data list. And this is interesting. I mean, we are doing all this, but we are doing it without having to write any JavaScript. So let's go ahead and try to make this more interesting. Now, let's go ahead and create the form that's going to allow us to create posts. So to do that, I'm going to go back to our create post page, and I'm going to go to create posts. Now let's go ahead and create that. So instead of having create post, I'm going to make this a heading. So I'll come and say rx.heading, create post, and then I'll save. So that will refresh, and then we have a heading. So it's going to be create post. Hello Ibrahima, I hope you're doing well. I wonder which country you're from. I would like to know. Kindly leave that in the chat. So our UI is going to refresh, and now we have create post. Now let us look at how we create a form. So a form in Reflex is defined by using the rx.form component. Very easy. And that is going to be accessed from rx.form. So we shall just go ahead and just simply add rx.form. Now this is going to take in whatever inputs that we may want to add. For example, in this case, if we go ahead and add, let's just add the various text fields that we may want, or the various components that we may want. Let's make this a little bit organized. So in this case, we are going to first create a grouping of form items. So in this case, I'm just going to create a box which is similar to a div, and I'll give this a class, and this class name is going to be of, let's say, form. Let me just call this form. Let me just call it a form group. Don't mind the styling. We're going to look at how to do that, but let's first take care of the functionality. So I'm just going to come right here and say this is going to be our form group. And once we've done the form group, now let's add the labels and the inputs. Now in this case, I'm just going to come create a text. This is going to be our title. I'm going to give this a class name of label so that it appears like a label of some sort. And I may just call this, let's say, our form label. So it's going to have a class of form label. And then right after having a class of form label, I'm going to now add the input. So the input is rx.input. That gives us access to all inputs. All we have to do is to provide the appropriate attributes to mark them as date fields, text fields, number fields, and so on. So let's go ahead and do that. So what we're going to provide in here is, first of all, going to be our name, because the name is what is going to allow us to submit this data as JSON or as an object in JavaScript. So we need to provide this, and we provide in the name as title. We're going to give it a placeholder, and the placeholder is going to be enter, or let's just say enter title. Once we've provided enter title, now let's go ahead and also add the type of this field. So we're going to say type is going to be equal to test, but that is going to be the default type of the field that you may want to render now on a Radix UI form. So this is going to be a specific form group for our title. Now we can also add this, and let's say give it a class name. Let's call this class name form-input. So once you've been able to do that, now let's go ahead and add another form group. This form group is going to be one for our body. So I'm going to paste that right there. So I do not have formatting right here, but if I want to add it, I'm going to install a certain black extension for VS Code. So I'm going to say black code formatter. So this is black formatter right here. I'll go ahead and install it so that at least my code appears more organized. Yeah. Hi Geoffrey, thanks for the kind comment. Are you also doing great by showing up to this live stream? Okay, so black has been installed, and I can simply format the code by saying Ctrl K and F, and that will go ahead and reorganize the code to make it look more organized, and also nest it so that we can know which container contains which element. So if I go ahead and save, when you head over to our UI, we are going to see how our form is going to be rendered. My food is getting cold. I guess I'll have to eat it while streaming. That's weird. Create post not found. Or let's say the UI kind of broke. It seems like the Reflex is trying to install new packages and updating our app with those new packages. I think we've like in the background used some elements that are not part of what Radix UI gives us by default. So this is our form right here. Do not mind the styling for now. I know most of you like nice looking stuff, but for now, what we're doing is to just build out the functionality, and then we shall look later at the styling. So when you go to home, we see a list of posts, just like you see right here. When you go to create post, we see a form being rendered right here. So what I'm going to do is to go ahead and modify this so that it displays the form element or the form input for our body. So first to do that, we're going to use a text area. I'm going to change this to from title to body, and then our class name is going to be form label. Our name in this case is going to be body, but I think it's not going to be an input. It's going to be a text area. And the text area is very similar to what we have in an input. All I have to just come and do is to say rx.text area, but then we shall have to provide the number of columns and rows for that specific text area. So in this case, it's actually going to be text underscore area. So we shall have the name as body, and then the placeholder is going to be enter the post body. So type is going to be text, but I think we do not require the type, so I'll remove it. And then we shall also have the class name as form input. So when I save, we shall now see that our text area is going to change. how many people are still with me in the live? If you're still there, please say hi in the chat. I don't know how long I've been streaming even. Four people are watching. Thanks for being around. It's one thing making this live stream and another thing being alone in the live stream until it ends. So I highly appreciate. Okay, so now we have enter post body. Now let's go ahead and add the submit button. So to add the submit button, all we do is to add a button component. Now that button component is going to be added at the end of the form after the last form group. So let's just go ahead and do that. So I'll say rx.button, or let me just say rx.box, and in there we're going to go ahead and say so in here we're just going to go ahead and say that rx.box is going to have the same class name. So that class name is going to be one for the form group, and then inside there we're going to have a button. Let me make my mic be a little bit organized. Hope you can still hear me. For those who are still with me in the video, I highly appreciate for watching. Hope my audio is still clear. May be talking when my audio has already broken. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so now let's go ahead and say this is going to be our rx.button. And since this is rx.button, we are simply going to go ahead and what we shall do in here is to go ahead and add, let's say submit, or let's say just save post. So once we do that, then our UI will change and we shall have this being shown. But we want to also go ahead and specify the type of this UI, because this UI is going to be the type of this specific UI element, because it's going to be a button and therefore it has to be one to submit our form. So we shall give it a prop or an attribute of type, and then we shall give it a value of submit, so that it goes ahead and creates our post. Now, to submit this form to our database, we shall need to go ahead and define a certain prop on our form element that we have right here, or our form component. So for us to do that, we shall just go ahead and say that on submit. Now keep in mind that I'm calling this on our form component, not on any other component, but the form component. So on submit, we want to go ahead and define a function that's going to handle the action of submitting that specific form. Now let's go ahead and head over to the post state. Now in the post state, I'm going to create a method, and this is going to be the one for creating a post. Now whenever we have an action or an event that happens when you click, when you drag, when you scroll, when you anything that you may do that's an event on an HTML element, certain so parameters that are added to the handler for that specific event. Now for a form, we're always going to have self, and then what we shall need is going to be the data for that specific form. So that will take in self and then the form data. So whatever we shall input in here will be sent to our API or our server, but what shall be sent will be the form data. So it's going to be a dictionary. So we're going to go ahead and specify that it's going to be a dictionary. And let's just print that dictionary out for now. Now you're going to notice something that's interesting. If we say form data, now that form data is going to be our form data. I wonder why it's recommending this. So I'll just come right here and say that we are going to come and say that this is going to be our form data. Now let's go ahead and try to access this where we create our post. So on submit, we want to go ahead and create a post, but we've defined the method for creating a post. So let me close some of these files. Once I've closed the files, we're going to have our state open. So I'm just going to pull that up, head over here, pages, and then I want to go to the state and access the post state. Now what we want is to access this create post method. So for us to do that, I'm going to go to create post, and then here we shall say post state. So shall need to import that first. I think we do not have it. So I'll say from reflex blog dot state, we are going to import the post state. So we shall have to import its parent file, and that is going to be our post state. So we're now going to simply go ahead and say dot create post. So just going to come and say dot create dash posts, and that will be just enough for us to submit. For now, what this is doing is to go ahead and just log our data that we've submitted within the form into our console. So hoping that we've not broken anything, our server is still running. So just try to add some data in here. Let's first wait for it to recompile. Hi everyday piece, I hope you're doing well. Kindly tell me where you're watching from. I would like to know. So if I enter some dummy data in here and post, we shall notice that that is going to be logged right here in our console. So this is the data that we're going to access and then send to the server when creating a post. Now, for now, what we can do is to simply go ahead and append this to our list of posts. So if we go ahead and try to do something like self dot post dot append form data, that will be just enough for us to go ahead and add that specific data to our post lists. Let's go ahead and see how that works. So if I save, IUI is going to compile. Thanks. IUI is going to compile, and when it compiles, whenever I'll fill this and then submit, our data is going to be sent and populated onto this list of posts that we've rendered here. Have some food. Okay, so it seems like our app has compiled. Now let's go ahead and try to create a post again. If I come and add a dummy title, a dummy body, and submit, it's going to be logged right here. So if we go back to our home page, go back here, we see that our data has been added. So if we navigate back to where we created our post and try to add, let's say, sample title and sample body, we can now save post, and now when we navigate back to our home page, we shall see that that is added at the bottom of our list. Now we're also going to see how we can be able to do that. So we can also go ahead and order this in terms of the first item being the last item that we've just added onto our list. Now, I don't know how they do that. I think I've forgotten how they do that. But what we can do is to go ahead and say self.posts dot, since that is a list. So we see append, extend, count, invert, insert, remove. I think it's reverse. When you call the reverse, I think that will render the UI starting from what is at the bottom being what is at the top, and what is at the top being what is the bottom. So the first items will become the last, and then the last items will become the first. So that's what I wanted to do, so that we have the posts that have been created now being the latest posts on our website. We shall also have to look at how we do this on the back end. All right, so we have a problem, and here we see that post.map, that, and then it seems like I did a mistake, so let me try to see. So if I say post.reverse right here, I think it will be a mistake, but rather if I save, let me try to save and see what will happen. If I save, this is going to refresh. It's currently past midnight in the country I'm from, so this live stream is going to be so long. It's not going to be so long. For example, the front end is almost there where we want it, and then we shall develop the back end, and then make sure the back end is communicating with the front end well, loading the post from the back end and creating the post on the back end, and simply doing all the CRUD stuff, but full stack. All right, so now we have our list of posts, and we want this to be rendered in a reversed way. So I think that's something we shall do from our posts. So let me go ahead and do that. If we go to our posts in our components, instead of rendering posts.state, I think we shall render posts.reverse. I think that's what we are supposed to do here. So if I save, that's going to compile our UI, and that will lead to us seeing what we need to achieve is data science and healthcare being the first one right here, being the latest post. So that's what we shall also do on the back end. Right, we've been able to achieve that. Good. Go back to the chat. Anthony Tay, hey Sally, what's the editor theme you're using called? Okay, let me show you. I got this from a friend of mine, and it's called Lime something. I liked it. It's called Limey Pink. Yeah, you should check that out. It's basically has these lime themes. I really enjoyed it. I honestly find myself using Visual Studio Dark. It's what I like, but when I saw that limey green theme, I fell in love with it, and I felt I should begin using it. It's interesting. It's just so nice for the eyes. It's friendly for the eyes, so that's why I chose to start using it. Okay, so let's go back to what we're doing. Right here, we have organized our posts in descending order, so that the latest posts are the ones that show up. So when you go ahead and create a post, so let's say Python or let me just add one really weird title. Google lays off the entire Python team. Layoffs are weird. Guys, what do you think about these layoffs? So Google lays off its Python team before Google I/O. So if I go ahead and save, this should be the first post that is supposed to show up here, which is working the way it should. Good, nice. We are doing all this with pure Python. We are not writing any line of JavaScript. So, can you tell me what you think about these layoffs if you're watching? I feel like it's so unfortunate for developers to just all of a sudden lose their jobs over factors they have no control of. It's something that I do not wish on anyone, and unfortunately I've been one of the people who have been in situations where I had to let go of a job because the company we were working for wasn't really doing what it had to do, and we weren't getting paid, so we had to let go. Yeah, so those are the uncertainties that are in the tech space. Now, one of the things that you can notice right here is that this is supposed to be our H1, and these are supposed to be headings of type. Let's just reduce them to, let's say, H2s or H3s or something. Now that we do that by using the the size attribute on our headings, and these are dynamic, and therefore we don't have to change them for the many times we render this, but we'll just have to change them once somewhere. So we shall head over to our posts. So I'll just go where we rendered our posts. Now I think it's right in here, and then I'll change this from heading, or I'll just change its size and give it a size of, let's say, so I'll give it a size, and this size is going to be 1 for, let's say, I'm going to give this a size of 5 and see how it's going to look like. It seems like there is not so much difference. So let me increase the size of the latest posts heading, and I'll give this a size of, let's say, 8. Then we shall have a size of 5, just to make it look more consistent, look more organized. All right. Thanks, looks great. We'll try it out. That's good. And then everyday piece says the CEO will change soon. User coming. Wow. And by the way, that can also happen, man. Like companies like Google, Microsoft, or what. No one has control. There is actually hierarchies to that. Like you have the CEO also being answerable to other people, and then those people are answerable to some people. So yeah, it may happen. The CEO may also change. I'm not that guy to keep like being updated on such news, but when I had the Python team being laid off, I felt really bad for them. I really felt bad for them. But let me ask you guys a question. Does that mean that Python is a dying language? I don't think so. I don't think so, though some people may make that conclusion that since Python is laying off its Python team, then that means Python is no longer needed at Google or something. Yeah, I've seen such weird posts. All right, so for now we can add a post, and it will be added in our state, and then we can be able to view that on our client. All right, now let's go ahead and try to add detail pages for all these posts. Now adding detail pages for this post is going to be as simple as finding out that attribute that is going to be unique to each of our posts. So that's going to be the UID, or let's say even the title. So for us to be able to do that, now keep in mind that for now our posts list or our post data doesn't have UID. So if you go to our post data, we do not have UIDs. So what we need is to add them. So I don't know how you're going to add them, but let's say I'm just simply going to go ahead and add this. Oh, I may actually generate the entire list again, but with UIDs. So let me try it. So let me go ahead and just try it. So I'll just copy this entire list of posts, but then order ChatGPT to add with UIDs or UUIDs. So let me just say chat.openai.com. and then I'll just say kindly write this list to add UUIDs with their keys as UID. Okay, let me just do that. So I leave AI to do the boring task. So I'm only seeing it's actually returning this. So I can help you add UIDs to each of the posts in the list. We'll need to import the UID module and generate. I wonder how it's going to return. I think it's going to just add that, and that's not what I wanted. That's not what I wanted. I don't think that's what I wanted. I want this to be in the list. Rewrite the list. Oh no, it's going to do this thing right here. Anyway, I guess I'll have to just hack my way into getting this to work. Oh, AI. How do you guys feel about AI? For me, it's a love-hate situation. I love AI, and it helps me do the boring things just like this. But I also hate it that it makes us lazy. It makes us really lazy. So what I'm going to do is just paste that code in there. If I paste this code right in there, I think we can achieve what we have. Let me try to see. So if I go inside here and I say Python 3 reflex blog / post data.py. Oh, we're not doing any kind of printing. So if we print our posts, we save, and then we run our app, this is going to just return. I think it's going to it's generating the UIDs which I wanted. Let me try to copy this entire thing right here, and then I replace what I have in here. So I'll format it, and bam, we have our list with UIDs. Now that is exactly what I wanted. So the reason that's why I wanted these posts with UIDs is so that we can have a unique identifier, and by using this unique identifier we can then create the post detail pages of these specific posts. Let me take some food right here. So for now, we've been able to look at how we can create basic pages, components, styling, and so on. We've also looked at how we can handle events. So I guess I'm still live. I am. So let us go ahead and look at how we can dynamically render detail pages for each individual posts. Now what I wanted was to add these UUIDs, and just like you see right here, they are all unique and they are specific to those specific posts. So let's go ahead and add the post detail page. So to create the post detail page, all we have to do is to go ahead and define a page with a specific UUID. Now in this case, we are going to go within our pages and then create a page. So I'll just call this the post detail.py, and this will have the same layout just like for our home page, but it's going to have a different name. So I'm just going to go ahead and add it in there. So instead of having a post list, in this case, we're going to have, let's actually first rename the component. So this is going to be our post detail. So for now, we are going to come in here. Let's just create a heading with the title of that specific post. So we're going to say rx.heading. And that heading is going to be the post title. So let's try to get the post. Now we're going to be making use of state. Every time we select a post, we want to be able to keep the state of that specific post. When we set the state of that specific post, now that will be just good for us. We just have to use that without having to make an external API call for us to be able to redirect to the page. So that's what we are going to do. So we can also do that approach of having to fetch the API, the specific post from the API, but I think that's kind of repeating ourselves. When we have these posts in our state, we can just go ahead and use that list of posts, and then we shall be good to go. So the post detail is going to be making use of our state. And one thing we're going to do is to also go ahead and set up an individual state of a post. So we're going to do that is by coming right in here and specifying that an individual post is going to be a dictionary of a string, and it will be an empty dictionary at the start of our application. Once we've been able to do that, now let's go ahead and import our state. So we shall say from reflex blog dot, this is going to be state. From reflex blog dot state dot post state, we are going to go ahead and import our post state. So shall say post state. And once we've been able to do that, then we're going to save. After saving, then we are going to come right here and we shall have to access our post state. So in this case, we shall say post state dot post. And in this case, since this will be a dictionary, we want to access the title. That's good. So right there, that's what we want for now on our post detail page. So I'm going to save. And once I've been able to save, then let's go ahead and add this to a route, or add this page, or let's just even call it the post detail page. So just going to come right here and say post detail. And then when you head over to where we created our app instance, which is in our reflexblog.py, we shall now just come right here and add that page. So I'll just come right here and say app.add page, and this is going to be a create detail, but we're going to see how we can dynamically enter the post UID. So let's go ahead and look at that. So we're going to come right here, and all I have to do is to import our page. So we're going to come at the top right here and say from reflexblog.pages.detail page, or .post detail. We're going to go ahead and import our post detail page. And once we've imported our post detail page, now we're going to go ahead and add it to our app by saying post detail page. And in this case, we shall say that our route is going to be /post. Now this is where the magic happens. We just use these brackets, and then we pass in the specific attribute that's going to be dynamic. And in this case, it's going to be the post UID. Now in this case, we'll just come and say /post/UID. And this will basically change the page depending on what UID has been passed in here. So that's the way Next.js kind of does its work. All you do is to provide the route and then / the individual dynamic attribute you want to add inside there. So in this case, it will be /post/ the post UID, and then you shall be able to redirect to that page that has that specific post. So when we save, our UI is going to restart, but for now we do not have any way of, so we are now having an import error. Cannot import name posts from reflexblog.posts data. Oh, I think I changed that. Let me go ahead and change that to posts. Yeah, we removed our variable posts. So I'll just come right here and say posts, and this will be equal to posts. Okay. When we save, our server will restart. So yeah, that's exactly what we've done. Reflex blog, our server is going to restart, compile, and then our UI will show up. Okay, so this is what we have right here. Good. Okay. Now what we're going to do is to add links so that when someone clicks, they go to the detail page of that specific item, and it has to be dynamic. It has to be unique to that specific post. Okay. Yeah, seems like guys are going to bed. Also feel like going to bed, but I want to challenge myself to finish this up so that I don't have to make a video about it. How many people are watching? Five people are still watching. Wow, this is good. I've kept 5 people watching. That's good. All right. Let's now go ahead and render the detail pages. So home is working, create post is working, so we can even move in between the pages, which is interesting. Do not mind the styling. We're going to add the styling in a minute. But let's first take care of the functionality. Now what we want is to render links that lead to the individual detail pages of these specific items. So to do that, I'm going to go to our posts lists, and within our post list, each heading is going to be within a link that will lead to the individual posts. So I'm going to cut this, and then I'll say rx.link, and then I'll have to go ahead and add our heading and then save. So we shall notice that these are going to change into links, headings that are going to be inside links, and then those links will lead us to somewhere. I hope you guys are clicking the like button. Guys, please click the like button. That's the only motivation that I need to go on in this video. I added that to latest posts. Yeah, that was supposed to be on that was supposed to be on the headings of the individual posts, not on the latest posts heading. So this is going to be the one with that specific kind of link. That's going to be this. Reformat. Things are okay. So now I'm going to add the href. So even the links have the href attribute, just like you see a normal HTML link. So what I'm going to have here is slash. So we're going to copy this what we created right here, which is going to be slash post slash UID. Now in this case it will be slash post, and then we shall head over to create, which is actually going to be posts. So in this case we shall add that, but we're going to be using an f string to dynamically add our UID. So this is going to be the post UID. So we shall just say post and then UID. So this is passing the UID like that. Done. We're going to save, and then when we save, our server is going to recompile, and then shall navigate to the UI. And now we can see that we have these links, and whenever I click on the link down there, we shall see that it's pointing to the individual UID of that specific item. So if we click, we're now going to go to the detail page of that specific post. Yeah, we are working, guys, we are working. We are working. Now, one thing we need to do is to set the state of the individual post every time we click that post. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, we're going to go ahead and define a handler for what happens when you click these links. When you click these links, we want to go ahead and update the state to set the current post to that specific post. And we want to do it inside the link right here. So let me go ahead and format here. Or let's begin by basically going ahead and defining that specific method. Now we're going to define that method as, let's say it's going to be let's just call it set selected project or select project, I think. So shall I just come and say select, not select project, it's going to be select post. Anyway, the product I was working on had projects. That's why I kind of talk about projects a lot, because that's what I was doing a lot. So I'm going to come and say self, and then yeah, it's taking self as well as the project. So the project is going to be a dictionary. So once we have that, then we're going to simply come right here and then say that the self.post is going to be our project. Why am I even calling it a project? It's going to be the post. The post data, or the individual post. So let me just say it's going to be our post with an underscore, and then we shall say self.post is going to be equal to that specific post. So we're going to be setting that specific post. Or let's begin by actually going ahead and printing. So in this case, we shall say post, or let's say current post is going to be equal to self.post. Now let this thing compile, and then we try to look at our UI right here. When you go back right here, we're going to have this. It's going to reload. So let's go back here. It's going to refresh. And yeah, we have this right here. So if we try to click, something interesting, nothing is happening. And nothing is happening because we have not yet defined when to call this. So let's go ahead and do that. When you head over back to our list, we want to go ahead and specify that every time we click these links, we want to go ahead and set the project to that current project we've clicked. So let's go ahead and do that. So this is going to be on click. So this is an event, and in this case we want to call the post state dot set. So in this case it's going to be dot set project, or what did we call it? We called it select project, so that's going to set the project. So in this case it's going to be select project select select post, and this will take in a post. So that post is going to be the dictionary that we're going to pass inside here. So let's go ahead and add that. So that will be our post. Okay, so let's go ahead and save. Our UI is going to recompile, and then shall see what will happen on the front end. Wonder if the UI has restarted. If we go here, we now see that it's returning data science applications in healthcare and it's printing the current post as that current post, which is working the way we want it. If we go back to our home and try to click on mobile app development tips, you can still go back home and then mobile technology explained, web development trends. Wow, this is amazing. Out of data visualization. Yeah. So for now, we can do most of the CRUD things on our inbuilt memory database. The only things that I may be pending are updating and deleting, which you can do. So now let's try to add this remaining data of an individual post. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and go to the post detail page, and then we shall basically go ahead and add the specific data that we need. So I'm just going to come right here. I'll call this rx.box, and in this case we shall come and say class name, and our class name is going to be equal to our, so we shall call this the post header, or let's say I'll just call it the post detail header or something of the sort, and the post detail body. Anyway, let me just call it that. So I'll just say post detail header, and that will have the title. Maybe I'll also add the rx.text, and this is going to be by the post author. Yes, then I may also add in the data to which they created. So let me say rx dot let me just call it rx.text, and in this case we're going to add on and then post, so it's going to be created. So this is created at, just like we added it in our post data. And then I may also give this a class, so let's say date. So having done this, then let's go ahead and try to modify this on the UI. So if I save, this is going to refresh, and then we shall see what we shall be having here. So these are undefined because we don't have a selected project right now. But if we went ahead and selected, we shall now see by this on that specific date. Now let's add the post body. So the post body is going to be, of course, in the post detail body. So I'm just going to come and say rx.box, and in this case we shall have the post detail body. So we shall say class name, and our class name is going to be the post detail body. All right, so now here we shall just add the post detail body, but in a real world scenario this will be, of course, some sort of like rich text, something that we have not been able to implement. So if I save, now that will go ahead and appear where we have our post detail right here. So if we go back to our home, click on individual posts, it's going to return us here. I don't know why it's not returning our body. Are we doing any mistake? Let's look at our post data. So we have a body, yes. Why isn't our body being returned? Seems like there's something wrong that we have to see. The body is being returned, and for some reason we cannot get it. Seems like I'm doing a mistake somewhere here. Hello ASMR programming, how are you doing? I would like to know where you're coming from. This live stream has been running for some long time, and yeah, for me to continue doing it I have to be chatting with someone, and I think some of the people who started with me have already gone to bed or something. It's currently like 18 minutes to the top of the hour, to 1 in the morning. Oh, I've been streaming for 3 hours. Wow, this is getting really long. This live stream has this is my longest live stream, guys. Please click that like button. I've been streaming for so long. Anyway, for now we have some basic functionality. Let's finish up the detail section and then we see how we can play around with this on the back end, so see how it's going to be. All right, so now let's go ahead and see why this body is not showing up. Hey ASMR programming. Oh, I'm tired, but I have to keep going. I promise you guys that this thing will be full stack, so you also have to look at the back end. Okay, so now what I'll have to do is to go ahead and add. What will I have to add? What will I have to? So we have posts dot post and then body, the post author, the post title. How come that these are showing up and the body is not showing up? Now this is where we have to do some debugging. Someone send me a chat, tell me what's wrong in your opinion. Oh, let us try to do something. So where I'm actually selecting the post, I can say current post body is going to be self.post, and then I'll access the body. So let's wait for this to refresh. I'll head over to the home page, and then I'll have some food. This food is already cold because I'm live streaming. Okay, so if I select a project, so that's printing the current project body. I don't know why it's not printing that. It's not displaying the project body on the project detail. Because if we did something like, let's say project post title, or let's say even UUID. Head it over to the home page. Oh, Jumbo. Hi. Yes. Hope you're doing all right. I've never gone to the US. I hope to go there one time. They talk a lot about it. Something seems to be really weird with how we're rendering the rest of the stuff. I don't know if it's the CSS that's messing me up or something. I don't know. But let me try to render this and I see. Okay, let's try. Something is really, really weird. I don't know if you have to, like, I'm doing well, thanks. I've never been to Uganda. I hope to visit one day. You should. Uganda is one of the countries that is easiest to come to, and it has got very nice weather, very fresh food. In fact, I'm having food right now, so I would invite you to come for some. Anyway, I'm trying to see where the error is coming from, but I can't see. Let me try to render this UID thing right where the title is to see if it will show up. I'm going to save. Then try to go to the home page. Let me wait for this to reload. And this is going to be my longest live stream on this channel. Wow. Because I'm now 3 hours in. And if it begins to the when we get to the back end, we may get to 4 hours. But yeah, I think it will be worth it if we build it full stack. And then I'll end with the styling, making things look a little bit organized. Then I'll go to bed. And I think that this is what I'm going to be doing. I will be making research on a topic, exhaust it, and after exhausting it, I will be coming here and building a simple project with that technology. And I think that will be one way in which I'll get to interact with you while also being able to share some knowledge. I think it's a good way and a good strategy. So if I try to reload, something is really weird with this. I think I'll have to restart the server for these changes to take effect. So let me go ahead and do exactly that. So let me just replace this with a body and then I'll stop the server, restart it. Let me try to go to the terminal section. Okay, so if I go back here, it's restarting. If we go back here, still we cannot see our pages. What is going on? We can't see what we are rendering. I can't see data science applications in healthcare by Jack Smith on that. We can't see any more stuff that is added after that. I don't know why. And yet we've defined it within our main. I think I'll have to restart the server to compile everything, to begin compiling everything. So I'll do exactly that. Okay, it's now running. So let's go back here, refresh. Still have the same problem. I don't know. Am I running mad or yeah, it's now showing up. So these are some of the problems that you may face. Some elements or some components may delay to show up, and that may make you feel like you have not yet done what you're supposed to do. Yet all you had to do is to just restart the server. Now things are showing up. This is looking at least so. Wow, this is how small things are in the normal size. Wow, this is small. Look at how small these things are. I guess I'll have to write CSS off camera because the way I'm tired, I don't think I'll be able to finish styling. Now let's just look at the backend. Now to make this more interesting, what we can add is models to update this. So let me try to do that. So we're going to go to the documentation, look into how to render models, and then based on those models, we shall be able to submit them to update this, and then we can also render alerts to delete. And yeah, then we go ahead and tackle the backend. After we are done with the backend, then we shall call it a night or a day, depending on where you are. So I'm going to get to the Reflex documentation, and then here on the Reflex documentation, I'm going to go to docs, and then I'm going to search for the model component. So the model is the dialog, and the beauty about this is they provide very detailed documentation on these elements. So if I want, I can open a dialog that will go ahead and open up. If I want to create a form just like the one we want to do, shall just pop up a model or a dialog. So I'm just going to copy what we have here and then paste it within our code. Then we shall be able to render our dialog. So I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to go ahead and paste it somewhere where we're rendering our post detail. Now within the post detail, before we go to the main page section, we're just simply going to have an update model. Or what you can do is to actually split this and make it a component. So let's go within our components right here, and then we shall create a new file. We're going to call this the update model.py. In this case, we're going to go ahead and say import reflex as rx, and then let's go ahead and create this model. Now to do that, I'm just simply going to define a function which I'm going to call the update post model, and this is going to be a reflex component. So I'll say rx.component, and once I've been able to do that, I'm just simply going to go ahead and return this entire dialog. Oh, I think since I cut stuff, I lost the content. So I just come right here and copy what I have here, paste it in here. So a dialog depends on a trigger, which we have here, but we may do without it. Let me explain. So if we went ahead and use this component where I want to use it, which is now post detail, you're going to notice what is going to happen. So we shall say from reflex blog dot components dot update model, we are going to go ahead and import our update post model. So once we've been able to do that, now we shall go where we want to use it. So I'm just simply going to come and say update post model, and then we shall add that right there. Save. Let's have a restart, or our UI will recompile, and then we shall see the trigger rendered somewhere. So let's go back to our home. The camera already froze. I guess I'll have to set it up again. Moment. Minutes to 1, and we're still going. Three minutes to 1. We're still going. Who is here with me? 3 minutes to 1, and we're still going. Who is here with me? 3 minutes to 1, and we're still going. Who is here with me? Yeah, we're here. Still having some food right here. My food is even cold because I'm streaming. All right, let me make this focus on me. So, let's finish this up. If we go to our browser, head over to the detail page, and I think the same thing is happening. We cannot, yeah, so this is what we needed. Edit profile, but it should be popping out this model right here, or popping up the dialog. Now what we want in our case is the ability to click that and then be able to update a post. So let's go ahead and set this up. So I'm going to go to update model and edit this. So instead of edit profile, we are going to have, instead of having a button, we may have the button, I think, but I think we're going to reduce it in size, make it a little bit more organized and stuff. Well, let's just change this and make it a link. And this is going to be the one for edit post. And this will be having a size, or let's say size, let's just say size, let me see about the sizes. Let me see how size 1 will be. Okay, when you save, now have edit post. When you click it, it's going to edit the post. So let's go ahead and modify this a little bit. Now that's the beauty about using components. You just have to make sure you use them as long as you can know how a component works. My camera has froze for the second time. I guess I'll have to just turn it on, turn it off. Okay, so let's just code and finish this. So now this is what we have right here, a link to edit a post. What we want is to render that specific post inside here. So the way we're going to do that is by, so we're just going to come here and say edit post. So that's going to be the title. And so this is going to be the description. Shall remove it, we do not need it. And in here, we're going to have the default value. So this is going to be the title, and then this is going to be, when you click here, we have name and email. what we need is when we click, we are going to access the post title and then the post body. So shall say title and then default value for this is going to be the post state title. So we need to import that. We're going to say from reflex blog dot state dot, this case is going to be post state. We are going to go ahead and import our post state. So right after importing our post state, then all we shall need is to go ahead and use that post state in our values. So we are going to come right here and then say post state dot post, but in this case we need to get that specific title. So since it's a dictionary, shall just come and say title. Or what we can do is to go ahead and actually say that since this is going to be called per post, then we can take that as a post prop. And once we've got that as a post prop, now what we need to do is to just pass in the post and then the title. And then right here we shall have the title. Right after doing that, then we shall have the body right here. And then the body will also have the default value being the body. But we shall remove this because this is an input. Let's go ahead and just copy what we have for the create post. So I'll just come right here and get the input and I'll provide it right here. So let me format this a little bit. So we shall have the body, enter the body post, and then yeah, that's what we are having for now. But we need to add the default body since this is going to update. So we shall say that our default value is going to be equal to post body. So even when we're rendering, let me remove this because I think it's repeated. So when you save, and now in our update post, we're going to get an error because we haven't yet provided this post, but this is going to be a dictionary. So I'm going to save, and when I head over to where we create our post detail, then we have to just pass in that post. So I'll just come right here and say post state dot post, since we want to pass it in as a dictionary. Now let me save. Seems like we're having an error, but it has gone away. The server is recompiling. Okay, so for now, undefined. If we go to home, edit post, we now see it's having the data as it's coming from our selected post, which is interesting. So let's go back to update model. It's going to be enter your title, enter your body. I don't know why this is. Should this have a default value or a value? That's something that is kind of confusing. So I'll have to go and look into the APIs. Now this is going to be the text area. And this text area right here is going to have a placeholder. I don't know if it has a default value. Let me read through the API. Size, variant, color scheme, autocomplete, value. It has value. Value. It has value. name, max length, autocomplete. Read only required rows wrap. Then it's going to be value instead of default value. I need to go ahead and read the API documentation, otherwise you'll be confused about how you're doing the most of the things. Great job, Onyango Mwanji. Man, you're having two names that seem to belong to Kenya and Uganda at the same time. Where are you from? Let me ask the question. Where are you from? Onyango from Uganda. Mwanji from Kenya. Where are you from? Where do you fall? But it seems like we have those tribes that are shared in Uganda and in Kenya. Yeah. Nice to meet you, brother. Hope you're doing well. Meanwhile, I have to live stream and finish this simple app. It has taken me 3 hours now. We're going to 4 hours. We're building this. But I'm proud to have live streamed for this long. So, let's go ahead and try to finish. So now if I edit post, for some reason this is not being shown. This right here is not being shown. I am really confused. Why is it not being shown? Read unless used with on change. Okay, so I now understand why this is happening. So whenever we set the value, what we're doing is to set the value. Let me show you an example right here. If we want to go ahead and control the text of our text area, then we have to set the state of that text. And after setting the state of that text, we go ahead and basically go ahead and change that text with the onChange event. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to go to our post state, and then we shall just add those, we shall just add the title. So the title is going to be equal to a string, which shall be an empty string, and then the body shall be a string, which shall also be an empty string. Once we've been able to do that, then let's go ahead and change and be able to fix the state so that we can have the title and the body being bound to those fields. Now, the way we're going to do that is if we go to our update model, we're going to go ahead and, since we imported our post state, we're simply going to go ahead and say that on change, I think we made a mistake here. And what that mistake is we are trying to sort of like drill these props instead of just using the state, which I think is a huge mistake. Anyway, I think I'll just have to get rid of this, and then we use the state. So I'm going to get rid of update post model. I'll do the same thing in the post details, so that we can just have update model, but this update model will be using the state. So if we go back here, we can just say post state, but then when we come right here, we shall just say post state dot post, but then access the title, the post, and access the title, and do the same thing for post dot body. So in this case, we shall just come and say post state dot post and then body. Good. So that's it, I think. So if I save, go back to home, something seems to be wrong. Post is not defined, and let's go back here in line 19. Yeah, that's something that I got rid of. So for now, we can see our posts Something seems to be wrong. So on change is supposed to be here on the text area, and that's something that we hadn't yet defined. So we're going to say on change and on change is going to be equal to project state Okay, yeah, now I understand what this is. So I'm actually supposed to do post state. So this is going to be post state dot, and in this case, we're going to have the body. Ask me why. Because in this case, what we're doing is to bind the state to these fields, but we don't know when to do that in a way that is going to have us to call the individual post. How? If we go back to our post state right here, all we have to do is to set the post, but then we can also go ahead and set the body. So shall say something like self dot body is going to be equal to the post body. I'm tired. So this is going to be post, but then we shall access the body just like that. And then you can also do the same thing for the title. You can say self dot title is going to be equal to post title. Now I don't know about you guys. I didn't want to do this to just stop the live stream, but it seems like it's getting a little bit late. So I guess I have to end it here and maybe continue tomorrow morning. Yeah, let's end it here and I continue tomorrow morning because I feel I'm getting tired and it's getting really late. Kindly leave me a comment down in the comment section before I close the chat and go have some rest. We can continue with this in the morning. And go have some rest. We can continue with this in the morning. All right, no one is telling me anything in the chat. I guess I'll have to close it from here. Please leave me a comment down in the description asking me about the topic that we've learned today. I'll continue the live stream tomorrow in the morning, and I'll do the part 2, which is the rest of this project. I hope you've had fun. I hope you've had a chat. I hope you've learned a thing or two about Reflex. Thank you for watching, guys, and